Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I am Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to our PAX East 2025 wrap-up special. And to help us wrap up our thoughts, experiences, games played, and just general feelings of the long weekend we spent in Boston playing a lot of games and seeing a lot of folks, we are joined by our associate producer, Sarah Moonen.
Hey, everyone.
You've got to run at this point.
I do. It's like I go to all the conventions and have a lot to say about them.
And everybody gets to have you as their associate producer. And by that, I mean they eat lunch because you tell them to take a break.
That's true.
That's true.
The real reason we keep Sarah around is so we eat, which is an important thing because we can't live if we don't eat.
There's a lot of other reasons, too, but that's where it started.
I'm also very pushy. I can get us on-the-fly interviews when I've decided I want one.
That's true.
And we got a bunch of them because of that.
As you can hear, I have my interview voice post-PAX because we did karaoke on the tail end of the trip instead of the beginning. So I will have my voice in all my interviews this time around.
Matt, I'm hearing you hesitate every time you say PAX East 2025. Now that we're back in New York and we're done with it, Sarah and I were also looking at, getting ready for PAX West at the end of the summer. And so I'm now just so PAX West. No, it's PAX East still. Hi, everybody.
I also think that it's such a liminal space, right? We spent 4 days with some of the best people doing amazing things, and then we all left, and it almost has that summer camp feeling of it was a different time, a different place. We were different people then.
Was it ever there to begin with?
Yeah, it's one of those things where usually I hit a pretty hard low after the trip, but this time I didn't. I eased back into reality a little better, I guess. I don't know what that's about, but maybe I'm growing as a person.
Or maybe it's because we've created better online spaces to keep in touch with the people that we see at these things.
That's
I think
true.
it has something to do with it. It certainly did with my enjoyment of PAX itself. You know, there used to be a smaller group chat that some things were organized through, and now it's one crazy big Discord that we all coordinate and post pictures of each other playing games in.
Locking in.
Locking in.
Locked in.
Yeah, that became a thing.
I love it.
So PAX East 2025, again, the three of us were there as media. We'll get to the games. We, of course, like last time, have our top 3 games that we saw, plus a fun honorable mention. But before we get to that, we got to do a lot of cool stuff, too, like hang out with friends of ours that we don't get to see in person a lot. Folks like Dave Jackson from Tales from the Backlog, Jacob McCourt from Crossplay Conversations, Left Behind Game Club, Video Game Trivia. And I realized once I mentioned Jacob's name, I have to list 8 things. But we got to see a ton of really cool folks, all of which we cannot name here, but we got to hang out, have multiple dinners, which was nice. It's always fun to get to vibe with folks that you only see online. In person, we got to meet some creators that I've collaborated with or Geoff has collaborated with in person for the first time, which is also exciting and is not a thing that we get to do that often. Also meet some new people, too. We made actual new friends, too, because that happens sometimes.
I think this particular PAX was important for this. Because at the start of the month, there was the giant bomb and Polygon shutdowns that happened. And I think a lot of us in the independent games media space felt some kind of crunch, some kind of doomed knell bell ringing. So being here for this weekend and seeing a lot of people that we care about, a lot of people that we respect and look up to and collaborate with was a nice reassurance. It's very easy when kind of working within your own space, and how many of us don't work within our own space in the digital realm, to forget that we're all still out there. And so it was very validating and empowering and emboldening to remember, yeah, we are all out there. We are all out there.
To that end, before the weekend was out, Giant Bomb joined us in the independent space, getting ownership of their own website back from fandom. And now they're self-managed. Core crew who were there when the layoffs, selling, whatever happened, did a panel live at PAX East and basically announced, yeah, we got our website back. And so we're going to keep going. And so that was exciting, at least a jolt of good news during the weekend as it pertains to that stuff as well.
Yeah, and it really felt amongst the community like this is the future of games journalism, right? As these larger outlets shut down and as we are still the ones covering indie games, places that are going to fall through the cracks when there's less manpower on it, and we're all there to hold each other up too.
Yeah, it's just a kind of a bummer because while I don't love big corporations on any level, those outlets were able to reach more and pay more people. And the kind of formulas that are forming now, like what we do on Patreon, what folks like Remap and Aftermath are doing with subscription services, that just can't sustain the same amount of writers and creators as the bigger corporations could. And so there's a reckoning still to come, but there are several things coming out of the ashes. That's the big thing I worry about still. Even in the indie space, a lot of our colleagues don't do this full time because they can't. That's still my big concern coming out of this, but the community was great. I'm so happy that we got to spend all this time with all these amazing people and play some video games. And when it comes to amazing indie outlets, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about 6-1 Indie. As of now, when you are hearing this, the latest 6-1 Indie showcase has aired. Geoff, Sarah, and I, as well as a bunch of other indie creators, got an early viewing of said showcase, and we got to see a bunch of really cool games and spend time with other creators. And something that Sarah mentioned before we started recording that I think is really great is we got to sit and watch this together, not over a Discord server, but in person, in the same room as like 10 to 15 other people, and get to like react in real time to these announcements. We all started snapping like we were in a hippie club, which was pretty funny.
Yeah, that kind of fell into a nice rhythm, and it was so fun. I mean, how much of content nowadays is reactions to announcements? Genuinely, I don't know what percentage, but it is a percentage. Having all of us there and games that we've been excited about, games we had knew nothing about, and a lot of us kind of having a bead on each other. So sometimes there were games that we were excited about for ourselves, and then there were times where games came up and we got excited for somebody else, and everybody started giving each other support, grief, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, I mean, when the Peggle-like game came up and the entire room was like, wait, is Sarah here? Did she see that? I was like, oh man, put Jump the Track on our Steam wishlist right now because I need that immediately.
That was the same way that like Mike Towndrow, the wonderful and lovely Mike Towndrow, started peering out from where he was standing, glaring daggers at me like, I'm going to watch Matt watch this next one. And when the trailer aired for Bobo Bay, which is basically chows that aren't chows, and it's basically a Chow Garden game, except they're called something else because, you know, Sega, don't sue these people. It was basically a pet raising simulator and very much had Chow Garden vibes. And the thing that Mike and I lament the most in the video game industry is that Sega must not like money because they have not made a mobile Chow Garden game yet. And we don't have any modern Chow Garden games. And so the developers of Bobo Bay just went, well, like Thanos Glove, I guess I'll do it myself.
Yeah, there's a lot of good games like that in the indie space now where folks are going, look, I guess the big company that has this doesn't want money. Okay. I'll take all the things that they don't own and make a game out of it. And I think we all benefit.
Yeah, totally. There were a ton of really great trailers, but I think the best part about getting this early access, first of all, just everything that Mike, Kyle, and everyone else at 6-1 Indie, there's too many people to name, do is just kind of awe-inspiring, and the showcases get better every time. Kelsey, who I didn't shout out before, now I'm trying to think of names because I don't want to leave anybody out. But
Kelsey and Becca, and
just really incredible what 6-1 Indie can accomplish. And again, like last year, we got to watch the Indie Game Awards, the first ever, live at a bar with them. This time, we got to watch the showcase in advance and react with them in real time. That kind of stuff helps push the industry forward, especially the indie game scene. And they do amazing things over there. And I was just honored to be a part of it and always to be considered a part of it.
Same.
Because a lot of what they're doing there is getting these games in front of the people who want them and the people who will talk about them too. That was a room full of people who will talk about those games. I mean, we were talking about them as they happened. And now here we are, and everybody else in that room is scattered and is chatting them up, hyping them up, and excited. And yeah, we are recording this on May 13th, the Tuesday after PAX West. So by the time this airs, that showcase will have come out, and we will have shared our thoughts on social media in a more immediate sense. But right now, just kind of riding the glow of the weekend, it was something special.
I'd be remiss if we didn't make Geoff talk about, once again, their last-minute panel attachment, as it were. So, Geoff, did you do another panel with the one and only Jenna Stieber?
Yeah, I was once again part of the PAX panel of the PAX panel show. Jenna has this wonderful, regular chaos trivia game that she does at PAX's that Most of the time, I guess, when you bring a panel to PAX, you bring your own guests. I don't know where it all falls through, and I'm not going to cause speculation. So whatever it is, it usually ends up with a less than a week before, and it's just Jenna and some empty chairs. And I'm usually there, and I'm game to be silly, be funny, and know really dumb things. And that's exactly what she's looking for. So it was a lot of fun to take part in that.
Also, of course, our dear friend Jacob McCord, who I mentioned earlier, did his trivia panel again. It's always a good time. It's funny. Jacob's always running around like a chicken without a head, but he is like the most Bob Barker-ass MFer that I've ever met, and he does such a great job. There was a great series of teams this year. Dan O'Mac and Trina from Gamerheads. It was Light from Lightweight Gaming and Steve Sayer, and CG, Danny B, and Dave Jackson. They killed it. The audience won again because the audience is all powerful, but it was a great time.
I like to think I always win Jacob's panel because I'm in the audience.
Right, exactly.
One day you're going to end up on the panel. And
no, he's asked me, but I don't want to lose.
So that's...
Okay, so Sarah, how do we convince Jacob to let us go up?
I know, that's what I said. I said, if I did it with you, as you who have won panels this time against Mr. Actually himself, Ifiwadiwe.
Yeah, no, I will say the PAX panel show this year, Jenna stacked the deck with me, and then Anagachila, Ifiwadiwe, and Matt Lees. We're all there to have a good time and make an entertaining product. And also try to figure out what the hell Jenna was doing with Pokemon portmanteaus.
Yeah, see, she likes really, really bad puns, and you are good at really, really bad puns. And so I feel like this is why you are a critical guest on this panel.
I can't turn it off. My brain just does these things. This is my dark urge. It's puns.
Can confirm.
We also, of course, got some great interviews, which you'll hear at the tail end of this episode. And we got to do some cool stuff on the show floor besides just interviews and playing games, like all of us taking a photo with a, to scale, Buster Sword. It didn't occur to me till the next day that the other scene that they had set up was the flower garden in the church from Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, no, we completely missed it because we were like, big sword. Go
Basically.
hold big sword.
Hold big sword. What props and flowers? Only flowers. Hold big sword. It took me 2 days to realize that tableau was there, Matt.
Yeah. Thankfully, the one and only Sarah Green, who works with the Square Enix folks in 47, wore her awesome Aerith cosplay, I think, the last day.
It was really
or the
good,
second
yeah.
day, and took photos, and they came out great. But we did all hold big sword. That's what we did with our press hour, because we knew the line would be nuts.
Yeah, no, we at West, we went and tried to play Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Here we were like, what do we owe? I know what we do. Big sword.
Buster Sword. Well, I mean, in general, when we go to PAX, what we are doing is covering indie games. Other outlets are covering larger games, bigger announcements. That's not why we are here. And listeners, I imagine that's not why you're here necessarily. If you are, let us know. Please, we do take feedback. But for us, Media Hour is more about what are the things that we could check out, we could talk about, we want to see, or we want to have at least dip our toe into the pool, that this is just going to get crazy later. Usually that means, what are the first things you see when you walk in? Because that's the prime real estate. That's where the big stuff is. When you go to the Boston Convention Center, you take escalators down into the convention floor. And as you take the main ones, or certainly the ones I think of as the main ones down, you see the Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering booth. And that's where there was a Buster Sword. We got down there pretty early, and there was already a line for holding it.
To be fair, we also saw the giant Elden Ring dome, but we don't care about Dark Souls stuff, so.
Well, I have a moderate care for it now. I've played a few of the games, but definitely not as intense as, say, some of our colleagues who love those games. The only negative I have before we go into our specific games is that this is the most empty that show floor has ever looked. It was kind of disconcerting. The only AAA presence was private appointments happening for various stuff. The Elden Ring Dome and technically the Magic the Gathering thing is a AAA product.
And the Pokemon Play Lab stuff that's at all of these. Don't forget about it. We just ignore it because we've done it a million times, but there was the Pokemon Play Lab.
And I double-checked. The pins were the same, so we didn't miss out on anything.
There was no Nintendo, no Sony. Final Fantasy was only the Magic. Like, they usually have 14 in some capacity.
Larian was there, but...
Yeah, but I know Larian is basically a AAA studio now, but I don't consider them that because they were kind of young and scrappy before they released Baldur's Gate. But, I mean, those anchors were still there. And like the PAX Rising booth was there, and there were tons of great indie games to play. But this is the first year I feel like we really had to hunt besides our appointments to find stuff we wanted to play. Now, by the second day, usually word of mouth has started to spread, so our colleagues will shout out stuff that we should go check out, and that's really helpful, or we'll wandered into something.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 5 or 6 rows of indie games that aren't just PAX Rising, and I think I spend most of my time wandering up and down those, seeing if there's an open chair where something looks interesting, in addition to someone going, oh, you need to play this game, go try it out, and then I hunt it down and wait in a little bit of a line.
We mentioned the shutdown of some media outlets, but there's also been layoffs among studios, big and small.
Yeah.
I mean, one of our favorite games from previous PAXs was All System Dance from Mighty Yell, and they were planning on being there, but they couldn't make it. They've had some financial troubles and had to do some layoffs. Fortunately, a game that they worked on was there in partnership with Atari for Missile Command Delta, which was a lot of fun and very cool to check out. That is a studio that we personally know of that ran into those difficulties. And I can't speak to any others or know of any others, but the feeling was there. You're absolutely right, Matt.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that bums me out, especially considering coming off of West and Nintendo being there and showing off the new Zelda. And like, I know Nintendo's touring the Switch 2 as we speak, which is imminent, but it's kind of a bummer, right? They have a brand new console coming out, brand new game. You'd think they'd be on the floor showing it off, and they just weren't. But it's not just them, right? Xbox didn't really have a presence other than in some indie games. This is definitely the lightest a PAX has been in a while. And I'm guessing that it's not easy to get companies to show up when they're faced with layoffs. They don't think it's worth it. Tabletop was still running strong. I didn't really see a downturn in the tabletop area, which is unsurprising because PAX is just as much tabletop. But that almost seemed more lively than the video game side this time.
So I actually disagree with that. I had several friends who were here mostly for the tabletop side of things, one of whom is a TTRPG author, and he said this is the worst PAX ever for him. He sold barely anything. People were not coming by. People were like walking through and maybe buying dice, sure. But the people who used to come to East for tabletop stuff are really focused on Unplugged now, that it's become a really big thing. So I almost feel like East is having a crisis of conscience of like, what are we?
Yeah.
Identity.
We don't have enough video games to fill out the floor. We were padding it with board games, but now we've taken the board game audience elsewhere. What do? What is East?
Right. I saw several signs mentioning the tariffs, and basically a lot of board game companies going, hey, our games are more expensive because we have to pay tariffs. We have to make up that money somewhere. Now these games are more expensive. Like, it's just kind of a spiral that I tried not to focus on too much this past weekend. And I don't want this whole episode to be about that, but it is something worth acknowledging, especially since I don't think Geoff and I have recorded since the pre-orders went up for the Switch. And so it's kind of a shit show right now. But all of that said, and worth acknowledging, we did still have a good time this weekend. We did see a lot of great faces. I'm never going to be able to shout out everyone by name. We also had tons of group dinners that were a blast with lots of friends that we adore. All 3 of us attended the engagement party of Claire and Luke from Lukewarm Games. We're getting married later this year. And so we all got to celebrate together, which was a lot of fun. There's always a lot to do with these. I feel like I can never be in enough places at once, but it was great to see everyone and to spend as much time as I did with both of you every day.
Likewise.
Yeah, of course. I love that sometimes we have to leave our city to see you more, but that's just because Washington Heights and faraway Brooklyn are on opposite sides of the world.
And work trips are work trips.
Work trips are work trips, and we make time for each other. Damn it.
Damn right.
Geoff and I actually did get our hands on a Nintendo Switch too.
Yes, this is something that we got to see. By we, I mean you, my extension of me.
I had an opportunity to check out Bravely Default Flying Fairy. It was a very brief demo, but I got to use the Switch 2 in its mouse configuration, which is something I've been kind of skeptical about this whole time, if I'm being honest, because the Switch to me is a handheld system. So I'm like, what am I going to use the mouse on my thunder thighs and make this happen? How are we doing this? I was introduced to the game through a very fun rhythm mini game, which I have a feeling I will lose a lot of time to, if I'm being honest.
You and me both, honey.
Yeah. It really showed off and used the functionality of the mouse part. You take the Joy-Cons off, you turn them on their faces with a little cap on it. There was left trigger things, right trigger things. You had to put them together. You had to hold them in a certain way. You had a line between them that hit different rhythm things. It was very, very fun. But I will say, when I was playing something not with the mouse, I got to play a little bit of the beginning of the game as well, which, did look beautiful. it just felt like the Switch again, in a different way than the Wii U felt to me after the Wii, because I think even though I was like, ew, big gamepad, don't want this, which hilariously kind of became the Switch, it feels so much the same that I'm wondering if after these pre-orders, how successful things are going to be unless games are really only exclusively coming out on that people really need to play.
I think the software is going to be what sells it in that sense.
Yeah.
I also realize in kind of us just talking about it right now, I'm sorry, this is apropos of nothing. It's kind of sad that one of the major streaming platforms is called Twitch, because if they made a Switch that was Twitch, they could call it the Twitch.
Oh,
Yeah.
that'd be so good.
Twitch.
That would be good. Yeah.
Like-
Damn it.
Like, right? That's just cash on the table.
I think that it's going to be the exclusive. Like Mario Kart's only on the new Switch. The new Donkey Kong's only on the new Switch. Those are going to push the console. It is a good question. Will it push it as much as the original did? For me, I wanted a more powerful Switch. That's what I wanted. I love the Switch. It's my favorite console of all time next to the Game Boy Advance. It's one of my favorite ways to play games, full stop. So another one of those that's more powerful is what I wanted. But it's a good question because Nintendo's known for changing it up and having gimmicks. And the mouse is a gimmick, but it's not enough of a gimmick. And so it's hard to say.
We'll see where it goes. Yeah. And also, it was interesting because the playtest that both Sarah and I got to do that involved the Switch 2 for Bravely Default was very secretive, you know, in that sense of, I mean, it was a Square Enix event. It was off the showroom floor, and we were explicitly told we cannot take pictures of the development unit of the Switch 2 of anything like that.
I literally left my phone outside so I didn't mess up.
Yeah, a lot of us are curious one way or another, excited, trepidatious, whatever. We are curious about the Switch 2, which is extremely imminent at this point, and that didn't have a presence either. I mean, a lot of the indie games we were talking to are in that sort of boat that we often have when we talk to them, where it's they're releasing on Steam, Switch would be great, but that's all we've got right now. And so there was a thing of like, we're waiting for the next thing, but it feels like a very oddly insurmountable plateau at the moment.
And interestingly, a lot of those developers were like, yeah, I'd love to consider it if I can get my hands on a dev kit, right?
Right.
They haven't even had a chance to think about how they would get their game onto the Switch 2 because it's not available to them yet.
Yeah. Most of the places that had, like, if they had artwork for the game and it showed all the logos of all the places it's going to be, it would have the Switch and they would comment, yeah, there's a logo missing. We can't really talk about that.
Not sure one way or the or can't talk about whatever it is. But the mini game that I mean, there was other stuff to play for Bravely Default, but I agree with Sarah that probably the coolest was that mini game.
They're the new things too. The 2 mini games we played are added specifically to this version of the game, which I think is why they were showing them off.
Oh yeah, and you could pick the character you wanted from the party, as well as we didn't have this, but I think you get to use the costumes from the various jobs you unlock, which is pretty cool. Like all those little touches. It was still a fun rhythm game regardless. Something that I noticed, and kind of the thesis that I was chasing this PAX East, I try to find what is kind of the big hyphen genre.
Yeah.
Like there's years where it's Metroidvanias or roguelikes or whatever else.
Well, at
and,
West, it was precision platformers.
oh gosh,
Yes.
yes. And whether that is what actually is for PAX or just what it is that we here at Fun and Games notice. And for me, it was rhythm.
Yeah.
Well,
Totally.
specifically rhythm RPGs too.
I mean, there was rhythm RPGs, there was a rhythm roguelike, there was a lot of different rhythm games.
Which really had your number.
Oh, they had my number real bad. And yeah, definitely rhythm RPGs. I told several developers, and I think it shows up in one of the interviews, like, that was one of those dream games, dream genres for me when I was like a teenager. Like, man, I love rhythm games. I love turn-based RPGs. There's got to be a way to make those work together. And a lot of different games took a lot of different tactics there. And I love that.
It made me excited for the future of rhythm games in different genres. I mean, I have an endless amount of love for Hi-Fi Rush, which was a character action game, rhythm game.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, well, this is it, right? No one's else going to make something like this. Although we do know that we are eventually, at some point in the nebulous future, getting a sequel. But like, after playing all of the rhythm RPGs, because there were several specifically rhythm RPGs that all played differently, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there are multiple ways to do this. There must be multiple ways to do it in other places too. And that just got me more excited for that genre blend, because I'll admit also I love rhythm games a lot. And the fusion of them are some of my favorite things. Well, I think this is a good time for us to get into our top 3 of the show.
Because we played a lot of fantastic games.
So many games that we couldn't possibly talk about all of them, but there was a lot of cool stuff to see. If you check our socials, we've posted about a lot of it there, and we'll continue to as we see those games come, because there are games coming out that aren't even in the honorable mentions that I'm excited to play that we couldn't even fit in here. To start with honorable mentions, I just want to quickly mention Skateboard Night, developed by Maru Games and published by Playism, which is becoming a fast favorite for us as we've seen a lot of cool games there over the last couple of years. It's basically an auto-scroller / Vampire Survivor style game where you automatically attack as you pick up upgrades, and you're just a little knight on a skateboard, and you change lanes, you destroy stuff as it dies, you pick up jewels. Jewels help you level up and also earn currency to buy other healing potions and other things. And it's basically, from what I can tell, kind of like a roguelike / Vampire Survivors kind of thing. And it was fun. Nothing mind-blowing, but it was a little thing that kept my attention and gave me the good brain chemicals.
It was delightful.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about it. I don't usually like vampire survival style games, but I think because you're in 3 lanes and it makes it simple and fun, I was like, this is the kind of game I could zone out and play for hours.
If this came out on Switch tomorrow, I would just buy it for commutes to work and stuff like that, right? It's a great train or bus game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this just makes me feel happy.
Yes. And a cute aesthetic, which we're all a sucker for.
It did, and I really liked that there was a lot of diversity in the upgrade tree. It wasn't like a one true way to win the game. It was just, what do you want to do? I like that kind of depth as well.
My honorable mention is Demon Tides. The developer and publisher is Fabraz. They call this an expressive platformer. And what they mean by that are they give you a series of moves that allow you to traverse the world in the way that you want to. You have a double jump, you have a spin, you have a go forward quickly attack. You can solve the puzzles and the platforming in many ways based on those moves. I can't wait to see what speedrunners do with this. It is a sequel to Demon Turf that came out previously. For those of us who did not play that game but now are going to go back to, you can pick up Demon Tides independently and they give you enough story that you know that you're a little demon girl. This is what you're doing. These are why you transform. And it was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun to watch you play, and it was fun to watch not only you suss it out, but us as a group kind of go, oh, that was cool. Oh, what was that? How did you do that? Right? Because of how dynamic the platforming was, there was a lot to kind of take in. Not that Mario is simple per se, but it's just not just jumping and jumping off walls. It got more complicated than that, but in an approachable way, it seemed.
Yeah. And with the quirky, snarky protagonist, which I always like.
I was about to say, it actually felt to me a little like an N64 Shantae.
Yeah,
Yes.
a little bit, but with more jumping options.
Oh, with more jumping options, the forms were much quicker about things. It was demons, not genies. It's not a one-to-one. It certainly isn't. And
but it evoked a feeling of, for sure.
That kind of attitude of character, that sense of color and exploration, and of let's just have a little bit of magic and fun.
Yeah. It's funny because the first Demon Turf dealt with a lot of 2D models, and this is more 3D and rounded and kind of vibrant. It's kind of that PlayStation to PlayStation 2 jump, even though obviously neither of these would run on either of those systems. I always like when they kind of show their hand as far as inspirations and how they design the game.
I mean, grinding was part of the traversal. What could be more PS2 than that?
That's true.
Also, recap on things. Skateboard Night doesn't have a release date at the moment, but it does have a demo on Steam, as does Demon Tides, if you want to check that out. But Demon Tides should be coming out later this year. My honorable mention, I kind of kept going back and forth. I really want to shout out Fresh Tracks. I will talk about it more as it gets closer to its release date, and I think we can cover that later. But the other one that I want to make an honorable mention, actually, as of this episode releasing, is out now. Desktop Survivor 98 from Brandon Hesslau, who is the developer, the publisher, other people in the booth as we talk to them, just oh, this is a family affair. His fiance and future father-in-law were there. Someone he worked on Buddy Simulator 84 with was also helping out. It was so delightful there. Desktop Survivor 98 is evocative of old desktop games from the Windows 95, Windows 98 era that uses graphics and ideas of those times while giving you a Vampire Survivors-like experience that runs transparently on top of your other apps. This is a game and experience that is meant to be done while you are trying to pay attention to something else on your computer. While you're on a Zoom call, you could also be avoiding the start button, or you can upgrade your cursor and do other crazy things. Listening to the pitch and talking to Brandon, and Sarah and I interviewed him before we ever got a chance to try the game, was taking me to a time and a place.
I never thought the solitaire cards would attack me.
I mean, I always thought they were going to attack me. They jump
Never
at you.
trust those suckers.
Maybe. I did expect the screensaver that I never gets into the corner to attack me, and now it has.
See, we're all learning. Yeah, well, I went by the booth after you guys had spoken to them, saw that they were selling physical copies of the game. And what I mean by
we got
physical
one.
Yeah, I did too. What I mean by physical copies of the game is it's a jewel case CD, like CD-ROM, burned CD-ROM. See, kids, we had these thing called CDs. You used to put music and games on
It
them.
stood for compact disc.
And this physical copy of the game is a DRM-free CD that if you have a CD drive, which I do not, you can install. But it also came with a Steam key. It was $10 on the show floor for this artifact that also gets you the game at a discount, I might add, because it's a little more expensive if you just buy it straight up on Steam. It's got this little cover art that has this little sword that basically looks like Clippy.
His name is Swordy.
Of course it is. Yeah, sight unseen, I bought it. I didn't even play the game. I didn't even really see the game. I just heard the word of mouth and then saw that they were selling physical copies that looked like an old school CDR for the PC. And I went, yeah, okay, I'm in.
We got our hands on it, and it was hard, but a lot of fun.
And I see myself being able to pay attention to a lot more while playing this game. My ADHD brain needs this.
And if you see photos of me playing it over podcast recording Zoom calls, you didn't see that. It didn't happen.
I was going to say, I only don't know that Geoff isn't playing it right now because we're sharing a desktop.
Exactly. That you know of.
That you know of.
All right, let's jump into our list proper. My number 3 is Revenant's Reach, developed and published by Shatterflash Studios. This was a game that I hadn't really known much about, and then I ran into some folks who said, yeah, there's a really cool artsy Metroidvania kind of Souls game with lots of cool traversal. And I went, and so I went to check it out, and I fell in love with it. It was hard enough that I couldn't just cakewalk my way through it, but it was easy enough that I felt I could do it. There were a lot of traversal mechanics that led into another. You have this like chain that you can pull yourself and launch across the map on.
Very Spectre Knight kind of thing.
Yeah, and then you can also use it as a weapon. Like if you expose the enemy's weak point, you can use it to like pull them apart. It was really cool. The art style is like 2D sprites with this 3D background that like as you get to corners, the screen turns instead of it scrolling, which is really neat. It's kind of like a puzzle box unfolding almost.
I felt very early PlayStation, but how we remember it. And when I was talking to David, the developer that was there, I kind of went, just off the top of my head, this is what I always dreamed the 32X could do one day, kind of feeling.
Yeah.
The motion of it was cool. The dodge and parry, the very Dark Souls of it was rewarding and satisfying without being cruel. It was punishing, but I had a great time just making my way through the stage that they had.
Yeah. It was also because the checkpoints were generous. So, like,
yes,
every time you got to a new platforming challenge, there was another checkpoint. And I think that's what would make a game like that sustainable for me. If it were challenging and I would have to go to, like, the beginning of the stage every time I died, I don't mess with that. I'm not that kind of a skilled player. This is a game that's in very early development. There's no release date. There's no current demo. I don't even know if it has a Steam page at this point.
It has a Steam page. I don't think they have the full game mapped out just yet. They were talking about they'll probably do a Kickstarter for it.
Yeah, it was one of those games that, like you say, it's very early access, and so I expected it to be a little buggy, a little rough, but like get the general idea. But it felt very polished. The one level they have, I got all the way up to the boss before I had to run to an appointment, but I really dug it. It played really well. I'm curious to see what the full game looks like, and if it gets a Kickstarter, I'll definitely throw a couple bucks at it because
Agreed.
It seems like something I'd enjoy.
So my number 3 is a game called As I Began to Dream, developed by Stray Flux and published by SoftSource. This is a game that I could not stop thinking about after I played it. Admittedly, I could not remember the title of it because those words just did not go in the right order in my head, but it's As I Began to Dream. You are a little girl, and you are lost in a dream world, and you see elements of your parents. You feel out of touch. The soundscape, the beautiful images, the way that this is, I have not felt this much in a video game in a very long time. Now, what is the game? It is a 2D puzzle platformer. So you are on the left side of the screen and you have to get to the right side of the screen. The way that it works, you have little boxes. These boxes turn and there are spikes, there are hazards, you need to figure out the correct orientation of them. Then you get added that you can switch the boxes around. So it gets harder and harder. There are bits of verticality to it just based on how they are. The puzzles were fun, but that is not what drew me to this game. The vibes are what drew me to this game, and that is so weird for me to even say because I am must-win video game, must be best at it.
Yeah.
But ever since I played this, and I only got a short time on the demo, I have not stopped thinking about it.
You had insisted on me jumping on the demo after you'd finished it. The really interesting thing here, so I played a Ranger last year, which was a slide puzzle adventure game. It was great. But this took the idea of like a slide puzzle or moving puzzle pieces in a different way, where you only move a certain section and then you can jump through that section once you've arranged it. Really interesting. And yeah, the vibes are kind of this fine line between dreamlike and bright and like dreamlike and possibly even horror. Like it's definitely off. Like the vibes are definitely strange. And I'm curious to see if this becomes some kind of horror or thriller game as well. It's unclear what the vibe is, but the vibe is intoxicating because it's just all aesthetics and puzzle solving, and it was really cool.
Yeah, I don't think this is a spoiler because they specifically describe the game as dealing with trauma in the realm of grief. But I took the headphones off and I looked at our PR contact at the studio and I was like, so that girl's parents are dead, yeah? Like you feel this weight of grief on you as you're playing this. And I haven't been moved like this by a game in a long time.
I would like to point out that you actually said, so my parents are dead, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, I said, so my parents are dead, aren't they?
And as the one of the three of us who did not play As I Began to Dream at all and was talking about something else with somebody else in that very small booth, that was whiplash. I quickly figured out what was going on, but for just a moment there.
Yeah, I was just so transported.
You were in.
Basically, if you liked Limbo, you'll like this game because it has the same kind of vibe of like you're a little boy looking for your sister. There are vibes, and Limbo starts off as like just kind of serene and quickly becomes more than that. And this had a similar kind of vibe that I had not felt in a long time. I'm totally stoked to play it whenever it comes out.
Well, we don't know what the release date is yet,
Nope.
but there is a demo available on Steam, so other people can experience this bit that we have as well.
So my number 3 is Nocturne from Pracy Studios, which we got to try out at the PAX Rising area. This is one of the rhythm RPGs that we were talking about beforehand. Any of the different RPGs had a different approach to using rhythm in your battle system. And where Nocturne went with it was that Guitar Hero style, notes dropping down to the lane, Dance Dance Revolution style, what have you. There are specific tracks for specific enemies and their one-on-one kind of fights. There is variation that is added as the difficulty gets ramped up. And it has such an evocative story. It is a sort of dystopian kind of tale that we have an interview with one of the developers at the end of this episode. So you'll hear a little bit more about it there. But certainly my childhood dreams of rhythm RPGs skewed more towards the battle scene is just a level of a rhythm game. As I grew older and as I learned more about games, that kind of became well, that just seems a little ridiculous or cumbersome. And this didn't feel that way at all. And I liked the level of accessibility they had for people who like RPGs but aren't necessarily rhythm game players or don't necessarily have the way that they want to play it. They can still enjoy the story. They can still explore the world.
Yeah, they talked about that you can actually put different columns on autoplay to be able to enjoy the story or to reduce the difficulty, or if you only have use of one hand, they want you to be able to experience this game.
Yeah, where rhythm games are often a get good kind of situation, this is one where it's just a piece of the traversal and the world itself, not punishment.
I do also think the difficulty scaling was something that was interesting too. You're able to change the difficulty at any time, but unlike with Guitar Hero where you have like 3 buttons is easy, 4 buttons is harder, 5 buttons is expert, you have the same number of columns all of the time. Their version of difficulty is just how far apart the notes are. Easier means the notes are close together and more in a scale, whereas more difficult, they're going to be all over the place.
I bounced off of the demo at PAX East because they only had a keyboard set up. They did confirm that they have controller support and you can even customize your layout.
Including on a Guitar Hero controller.
But I struggled with the keyboard. I'm a typist who is missile command typer. So I don't have home keys. I don't know how to hold my hands like that. I've just never learned. And so I failed a lot. I couldn't get past the first fight. When I got home, I did download the demo to give it a shot. Unfortunately, the demo on Steam doesn't have suggested control scheme for a controller. You have to map it yourself, which is handy, but like I want a baseline to build from. So I'm going to reserve judgment till I can get like a better handle on it. It looked gorgeous, though. The story seems really interesting. I love the pixel art.
Yeah, it's got that kind of top-down Chrono Trigger feel, and especially because the tracks that they've composed are so tied to the foes you face, there is that Chrono Trigger style of random battles don't feel so random. And yeah, no, I'm somebody who learned how to touch type when I was in high school and is a musician who played piano as their first instrument. So I know I'm extremely biased when I look at this and I go, yeah, man, it's so easy. Like, come on, you lock in. Let's go. God, why does anyone struggle with that? Because I have spent 30 years knowing how to do this. I get that. Thankfully, that meant I could get past that and look at everything else. And I can say that that also is exciting. And currently, Nocturne is looking at a Q1 2026 release window. But as Matt said, there is a demo currently on Steam that is pretty generous about it. So if you're interested in that, if you want to see if that kind of gameplay is for you, it's already there to check out.
And we might as well keep this rhythm game train rolling. My number 2 is Fretless, The Wrath of Riffson, which is a game that was endlessly talked about at West that everyone was so mad I missed because it was a Matt game in all caps and quotes. We finally got to play it this time. We actually got an interview with the main character of the video game himself, Rob Scallon. But what Fretless is a turn-based RPG with rhythm game elements, but sort of card-based where you pick the moves based on how many frets you have, and they are timing-based. So it's more of like timed hits rhythm. So you're timing the timed hits and the blocks to the rhythm of the game and the music. I fell in love with it immediately. I got sucked right in. Has kind of the Mario RPG style irreverent humor also, which hits hard for me because I love that as well. The graphics are somewhere, like there is detail in the expressiveness of the faces. The characters are very blocky, and then the environments are really vibrant, almost SNES-esque. And it was excellent. Like I could have played it for hours. This is one that I knew I would like just because of what I had read about it and seen. When everyone you know in the indie game space is going, Matt, why haven't you played this game? You should have played this game. I knew I was going to like it. So this is developed by Ritual Studios and published by PlayDigious Originals, and there is a demo on Steam. I think people should really check it out if you're into rhythm games and into RPGs. This seems like it's going to have a huge world to explore, be really fanciful, really entertaining. There was a moment in the demo where I handed my headphones off to both Sarah and Geoff because not only are there instruments and music in the world, but like there are bellflowers that are literally bells. And I walked through a field of bellflowers to make music. And what Rob had said is that all of the instruments that you can encounter in the world, you can make music with them. So you're creating the music as you play these battles and go through this game.
The way that Nocturne kind of pulls rhythm games towards RPGs, Fretless pulls RPGs towards rhythm, where you have that Paper Mario timed hits. Well, it's like, well, if you've got timed hits, why not time them to the beat? As somebody who plays guitar, as somebody who has played in bands, looking at all of those pieces and going, oh, I get that. I know what that is. But you don't have to know what that is to understand it within the game. It is sort of a Paper Mario take on something like Brutal Legend. I do want to point out that all of us made sure to pick different games for our top 3 so we could showcase as many of these games that we enjoyed as possible. But this isn't because Matt picked Fretless that Sarah and I don't care about it.
Exactly.
Including Sarah's number 2.
Yeah, I was saying my number 2 is one I had to fight Geoff on. This one's called Motion Wreck, developed by Handsome and published by Playism. It's another puzzle game. As you guys can tell, I really like puzzle games. But this one has a really special mechanic to it. You have a tape that lets you record your movement. So if you walk from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen while recording, you get a little line that is that length. And if you jump and you push another button, you will do that same motion path. Now, that's the simplest form of this, right? You can also go down, take an elevator up and down, move around, go left, under, right, all of the places. My brain has not had to work exactly like this in a while. And so it was a puzzle game that gave me a new puzzle to solve. And I think that is why I liked Motion Wreck the most.
You look at a room and you go, oh, I obviously know what to do. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. Those little bits of kind of scratching at the brain, and every one of them felt so satisfying to pull off and to play with. Motion Wreck does a really nice job of when you do something wrong or you don't quite get it right, it's not as if you are now like going in and making all these minute adjustments. You try a different motion, you try a different recording. It's very forgiving. It's far more forgiving than most actual cassette tapes are, but that's the magic of video games. And it has this brilliant black and white kind of Gato Roboto look to it that automatically draws me in. And I am a basic bitch kind of music person where it's like, oh, it's got a strong cassette tape motif? Yeah, all right, cool. And then it just also happened to be smart and tight design and very fun platforming and puzzling. And a game that I really want to play the whole way through.
Oh, absolutely. I'm devastated that there's not a demo out, or else I would have wanted to play it on the way home.
Yeah, basically when I got up from my chair playing Skateboard Night, Sarah said, sit, play. I'm a little cooler on it than both of you are just because I got stuck pretty early. This was like the last day of the con, but I'm definitely interested in the final release because it has the makings of a Gato Roboto, of a short but pleasing video game experience.
As Sarah mentioned, there is no demo currently as of our recording on Steam, but there is a trailer. Watch it. If looking at it and seeing how the gameplay works, if that intrigues you, you're going to want to play this. Speaking of aesthetic games, I suppose, or one where the aesthetic drew me in, my number 2 is Perfect Tides, Station to Station. Developed and published by 3Bs, this is a sequel to Perfect Tides, which came out a couple of years ago. I heard about Perfect Tides because the main creative force behind 3Bs is Meredith Gran, who was the person behind the webcomic Octopus Pie, which I read throughout its run, and it's probably one of my favorite pieces of, honestly, graphic literature ever. I'm a big fan of Ms. Gran's storytelling, of her sense of character and timing, and the fact that she pivoted into game development was an utter joy to me. So I feel really bad that I bought Perfect Tides as soon as it came out and then completely forgot to play it. So this was a chance to right a few wrongs.
And to meet Meredith herself.
She's very cool, and we do have an interview with her at the end of this episode. Her art style, her character design is on full display here. And so both Perfect Tides games are point-and-click adventures. And while the soul of the point-and-click adventure has shown up in a lot of more meta puzzle games these days, the Perfect Tides games lean into old-school point-and-click with a lot of friction removed because it's meant to talk about the tales of when we're teenagers and young adults. As people who grew up in and around New York City, we know these people. We don't know these specific people. We know these people. We know these incidents. We know the way that all of these things go. The writing and character and world building within this game, I could have blistered my way to probably whatever the end of the demo was. I didn't want that. A point-and-click game for me is about exploring the world. And in this one, it is utterly inner monologue of Mara, the main character, and getting her take on things and how she feels about the people around her, whether she feels better than them, worse than them, she looks up to them, she's attracted to them, whatever it is, and all of those at once even. And a lot of fun little artifacts of the early 2000s that show up, make you happy if you understand them.
And feel like they come for you specifically.
Oh my God.
If you do.
Yes. This was also a thing of like, this is my millennial Asco, and this game came for me specifically. I am probably going to blow through a run through of Perfect Tides this week, and then I will download the demo for Station to Station. It doesn't have a release date at the moment, but the demo is available on Steam.
Yeah, it's a game that aesthetically took me back to like the old LucasArts.
It's got Sierra, it's got LucasArts.
Yeah, it's got that vibe. The writing was very good from what I saw. I'd be curious to play the first game and see if I click with it. Point-and-click adventure games are games that I truly love, but whether I get along with them all the time depends on the game. But what was optimistic about watching Geoff play this one is there were lots of little rewards for every little thing that you do in a way that like other point-and-click adventure games will kind of punish you if you don't know what you're looking for. This game always rewarded you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's what's different for me about this than other point-and-click adventure games. I agree. I feel like if you don't have the key to go in exactly the thing, or you don't know that you need to give this item to that guy, you die. This isn't about that. This is about the connections that you make with people, turning you into a different person, which is how life actually works, right?
Yeah.
And so having that reflected in a game is very cool.
It's a point-and-click adventure game where a lot of times you pick up inventory and spend the entire playtime taking everything out of your inventory one at a time and like hitting it against stuff to see what would happen, which also could be a description of being a teenager. But in this one, your inventory is your observations and your connections. I think that is where the removal of friction is most apparent and makes me the most excited to really delve into this when it has a full release.
Moving on to our number ones. My number one is called GIGASWORD. I have to say it that way because it's all in caps. This game is by Studio Hybrid. It's a solo developer named Jack, published by Akapar Games. And GIGASWORD is exactly what it sounds like. It is an adventure game or Metroidvania with a giant sword. This giant sword is multi-purpose. It's a multi-tool, basically. You are using it to solve puzzles. You are using it, or not, to platform. And you are using it for combat.
And you're using it to open doors to get to the next area.
It's a giant sword that swings slowly, so the combat feels very belabored, like a barbarian using a broadsword. But then when you jump with that sword, well, you can jump in combat get a little height, do a downward stab, which is the first thing I check anytime I have any sword in any game.
Same.
You realize very early in the demo that there's a high ledge that you can't get to. They teach you to plant the sword in the ground. Once you do that, you can jump basically twice as high. And there are a lot of puzzles in this game where you have to like plant the sword in an elevator, jump up to like a crane, then wind the crank, bring the sword up to you, and then keep going. And basically within the first 3 minutes of holding the controller for this game, I went, oh no, I could lose my whole life to this game. There was no way that this wasn't going to be my number one game. Fretless would have been the only thing that could possibly compete. But like, while I have a lot of favorites, I think an action platformer or a Metroidvania will always be my favorite because there's something tactile about that kind of control that you can't emulate in any other genre. And the minute I latch onto something like that, like my earliest moments with Shovel Knight when I played it at your house way back when, like you can't recreate that in a different genre. Not for me, not that identical feeling. And so I had that immediately with GIGASWORD and didn't want to put it down. This game currently has a demo on Steam. There is no release date. You can wishlist it. When we talked to Jack, his goal is this year, probably towards the end of the year. No promise on a release date yet, but that's the goal. And I'm literally now counting the days until I can play this game.
I went back after watching you play it and got to play the whole 30 minutes of the demo, and oh my goodness. The sword is its own character. Like, you feel it there with you, the swing of it, the way that you have to solve these puzzles. I actually thought it was going to be a bit simple, right? It was like, put sword on thing, move sword up, jump, get sword, but it's so much more than that. I can see why you immediately loved it, and I'm also super excited for its release.
And it's also one of those games that has an aesthetic and a sound that is very indicative of games that Geoff and I have obsessed over, like Shovel Knight, like Castlevania.
Oh, yeah.
The vibes were immaculate. It's become my most anticipated title, I can say, of this year, but we don't know when it's coming out. But it is easily my most anticipated game in the nearest future because I just became so infatuated with it.
So the game I became infatuated with isn't actually coming out this year. We have to wait till 2026 likely for it, but it is called Tanuki Pond Summer. This was one of the first games I played at PAX, and nothing came close to catching my heart the way this one did. You are an adorable little tanuki in a cartoon world. You're lazy, your shrine is dirty, and you have a month before the festival, and this is the festival where the tanukis and the humans are together, and you have to deliver packages and make the festival great. Make it all nice. Okay, that's all great and all. How do you deliver these packages? You do it on a bike, and the bike has Tony Hawk controls. And from moment one, the tutorial does not teach you how to deliver packages. It teaches you how to traverse the world with your bike. And oh man, it makes it so much fun. I had like 4 minutes left in the demo, and I was like, I'm not going to deliver any more packages. I'm going to see how many times I can fall off this bike trying to do too many tricks. And I had the best time. But delivering the packages is also an amazing part of this because it's a mini game. The first mini game is sumo wrestling. You're delivering videos to a guy of himself in his prime when he was a sumo wrestler. Then he wants to teach you to sumo wrestler. So you gotta stomp and you gotta punch him and you gotta belly bump him. And oh no, mini games, Tony Hawk, no falling damage, adorable little tanuki, delivering packages. I was sunk.
Yeah. The sumo wrestling mini game had like punch out controls. The tutorial, you need to know that you can do cool shit while you're riding around. Like, you can go from point A to point B, deal with the arrows and the mini-map, whatever, but don't you want to grind on the rails? And don't you want to do cool tricks and go up those ramps that are over there? Yeah, you do.
You guys, I lost an absurd amount of time to the pizza delivery game in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. This is a game where I can do that too and not just be the best pizza delivery person, because I was a lot.
You were. You absolutely were.
I was. And this is that, but better because it has a story and mini games and no falling damage.
It's got that like kind of very expressive, shaded color, but cartoonish flat kind of feel to it. So it's got a very whimsical, the way that a lot of anime has nostalgia about summer.
Even deeper than these awesome gameplay pieces, it's also a story about being different, right?
Yeah.
And being an outsider in a community, and, you know, people are welcoming, but you're still not exactly like them. And I think that that's really sweet too.
Also worth shouting out that this is being developed by Denkiworks and published by Critical Reflex, but one of the devs that we spoke to is an old friend of ours, Liam Edwards, who was the developer of Curse to Golf. So it was so great to reunite with Liam. This is one of those games that you played it, I watched you play it, and I had not gotten to play it for several days. And when we were back over there, I think, so you guys could do the interview, I was like, you know what, screw this, I'm going to play the game. And I did, and immediately fell in love with it. And what I loved about it is I suck at Tony Hawk. I love Tony Hawk, but I am bad at it. This game takes the Smash Brothers approach. It's Tony Hawk style tricks. You can fall off or lose or not gain the points if you don't complete them. But the way you execute is like holding a button and pressing the joystick, or pressing the joystick and pressing a button. Like, it's very simplified so that you basically, if you can push in a direction and press a button, you can do the trick. And it just felt so easy to pick up so quickly. I think this is going to be a blast to play.
I will say you can also technically just like ride the bike straight on the floor without doing any tricks, but you can jump up and put your butt up. And why wouldn't you do that?
And there's a bell you can ring. It's part of the whimsy, damn it. And that's why we play games.
True. Geoff, why don't you take us out with your number one pick?
Well, my deeply whimsical pick is White Knuckle, developed by Dark Machine Games and published by Dread XP. I don't often talk about the sort of horror games I like. I do like horror games, and I do enjoy a lot of what Dread XP puts out. They find some of the coolest indie horror titles. They're not necessarily the ones that are about the big jump scares, but they could be. They're not about blood and gore, but they could be. They're about feel. White Knuckle is a roguelike climbing game. It's a first-person climbing game. None of these are things that I typically do. But we had a chance to try it out and chat with the dev. It sucked me in instantly. There's a certain amount of puzzle about how you traverse. There is a wonderful design in how the graphics look. It's got that sort of Half-Life 1, Quake, Doom, pixelated texture with very clear handholds and places to go. There is no meter of something chasing you. Honestly, the display is fairly austere. It doesn't need to do anything crazy. Your hands are white. They turn redder and redder the more you lose your grip. And that's terror enough without even knowing something's chasing you. Most of what I played was in the tutorial, and it still was just satisfying to play. And there was a sense of momentum to what you're doing. You can swing and build. And chatting with Holly, the dev I was playing, she said that there was often for people a time where it's a little cumbersome, it's a little off, and then the mechanics click and everybody suddenly gets faster. Fast enough? Who knows? But I started to find and feel that moment, and I want to find and feel it again. The game is actually out right now in early access, has been since April 17th, but there is also a demo on Steam if you're not ready to fully commit to an early access game, but I think it's worth a try.
Yeah, I immediately downloaded it as soon as I got home from PAX. I played it this morning as of when we're recording, and I also was like, oh, maybe I'll enjoy this. And then like within seconds in the tutorial, once I climbed the first ledge, I was like, oh no, like I like this a lot.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I struggled with, you can carry items on you. You can only carry a certain amount, but you only have the two hands to hold items plus whatever you stick in your belt, I guess. Just changing hands while changing items, I struggled with it. I'd probably get better at it as I played, but it was a lot of fun. It was really satisfying. I'm more excited to watch other people better than me play it and get scared, but it was really satisfying to play even when I got my hands on it.
Well, to your point from before, Matt, of us like collaboratively playing games, this was one of those ones where you and I were standing there watching Geoff play this game, and I don't typically like watching people play games. I was sucked into it. I was fascinated. I was like, how are you going to do it? Don't fall off that thing. Get that python in the thing. Hammer it in. Get up there. You could do it. Get the thing out of your belt. You got this.
Honestly, the inventory management was frustrating, but that was the moment where it got me. I was enjoying myself, but once it turned into okay, so wait, if I move this over here and take this and then I hammer that, oh no, I'm going to be planning this. I'm going to be thinking about this for a while now. And I was. Well, we played a lot of fantastic games at PAX East 2025, but we certainly couldn't play all of them.
Yes, correct. And there are tons of games that we haven't talked about here that we will talk about more about on the internet as they come out. But if you were at PAX East, let us know some of your favorite games. If you weren't at PAX East, PAX always puts up a Steam page of all the games that have demos that are at PAX. Did you check out any of those games because you wanted to be at PAX but couldn't go for reasons? If any of these games do interest you, please wishlist them on Steam. Even if you're not going to buy them on Steam, it helps them to get funded, get published, get people wanting to buy the games or play the games. I have wishlisted every game that we've talked about today. It's a great way to help those studios, and it costs nothing to do it.
Let us know if there are any games that you saw on Steam, at PAX, whatever else that we missed that we really ought to check out, or we did and we didn't talk about it here and you want to talk about it more. Well, we love talking about games. That's why we're here. So please reach out, get in touch with us. There's so many great ways to find us. We are Fun and Games Pod across all the social media that we are currently active upon, which as of this episode is Blue Sky, Instagram, and Tumblr. You can email us at funandgamespod@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of this episode, what you thought of previous episodes, what you'd like us to talk about, and who you'd like us to talk with on future episodes. Definitely hit us up with those PAX East recommendations if you are so inclined. You can visit certainpov.com and find not only other fantastic Certain POV podcasts, of which we are one of them, but also permanent invite links to our Discord server, where a lot of these conversations continue, a lot of our gaming log builds up, and a lot of our topics for episodes begin. If you like what we do here and want to support us and have the means to, or you just want a one-stop shop of everything we're doing, you can visit our Patreon, patreon.com/funandgamespod. There is a free tier. If you want to be involved, you don't have to give any money. You can take part in all of our polls and read everything that Matt and I are up to that we post there. But we do want to shout out everybody on the high scoreboard and above. And today, the high scoreboard is Alex Lavelle, Case Aiken, Daniel Nyden, Alejandro Alves, Chris Copleen, Curly Bright, Film It Yourself, Patrick Edwards, Robert Prine, and Sean Bowen. Thank you so much for your support. Please enter your initials. The floor will be closing in 15 minutes.
A big shout out to our associate producer, Sarah Moonen, for joining us on this episode. We are always happy to have you on the show. It was fun to get to guest on another show with you when we joined the folks over at Remember 64. If you guys haven't checked that out yet,
It was
the
so
three
much
of us.
fun.
We joined them for their Banjo-Kazooie episode, so go check that out.
Which was oddly prescient for a lot of what we played this weekend.
Absolutely. We kept talking about how we all just played Banjo-Kazooie and now we're playing this kind of puzzle platform.
And now yeah, exactly. Jeez. And it wasn't just Demon Tides. It showed up a bunch.
Yeah. A free way you can help us is by subscribing and rating and reviewing on your podcast platform of choice, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Pocket Casts. All that helps us to get featured. So when folks search for PAX East 2025 wrap-ups, they find our podcast as it jumps to the top of the list in the almighty algorithm.
And please stick around after we're done here for all of the interviews with all of the fantastic developers, not just the games that we mentioned, but other ones as well out on the floor of PAX East 2025. And we hope you stick around to listen to those. Whether you are on the Patreon, you have rated and reviewed, or if this is your first episode of Fun and Games Podcast, thank you so much for being here. We couldn't do this without you. This is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I am Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
We are at the PAX Rising Indie Showcase area, and we just played Nocturne from Pracy Studios, and we're here with Ben, the creative director for the game. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for coming by and playing out the game. I have to assume there's a lot of RPG fans in the studio. Was the goal always to make an RPG? Was the goal always to make a rhythm game? Did it just kind of happenstance come together? Like, where was the plan?
Given that Nocturne is a hybrid RPG and rhythm game.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, it really started with the RPG, actually. I wrote the story first before anything else. And I grew up playing rhythm games, so it kind of felt natural to me to combine the genres. I played a lot of Guitar Hero as a kid, and growing up I played Chrono Trigger and the pixel art Final Fantasy games, so those two genres combined just made sense to me.
I'm definitely seeing that kind of art design in the way that the game is. There is a pixel art, but the level of animation that's going on is far more than anything that the SNES could do.
Yes,
was also from the beginning the idea to have more of a pixel art style? Was that something that happened organically, or was that just like from the get-go?
Yeah, pixel art from the get-go, but it took us a while to find the style. You know, we played around with NES style pixel art as well, but we kind of settled on this more modern style, you know, less blocky colors. We have actually HD lighting and shadows in the game as well.
Matt and I both briefly played a segment of the demo, which I believe you said is about a half hour into the game, or a little ways
Yeah,
into
we
it.
start you off about a half hour.
And it seems as though the two characters there, Karma and Kimothy, are talking about some pretty dark stuff that's going on, corrupted world, strange things like that. Is there anything you can tell us kind of about the world that Nocturne takes place?
Yeah, it's set in a digital afterlife. So our main character has died and they've been uploaded to a digital world. Wow. And they arrive expecting to meet their brother there, who they knew was uploaded. Instead, they find 1,000 years have passed and the afterlife has lost contact with humanity. So it's this mystery of what's happened to the world, but also why did I show up 1,000 years late? And where's my brother, you know?
It's amazing. And you said you had this story before you had anything else. Is this something that's been rattling around in your head for a while? Were you inspired by other kind of like science fiction-y kind of afterlife stories?
Yeah, I'm definitely a big science fiction nerd, but also like, you know, fantasy and, you know, Lord of the Rings and, you know, the Final Fantasy games. So it all kind of came together.
Love that.
Very cool, very cool. So what's the inspiration behind the music gameplay going on here? There's a little bit of a Guitar Hero kind of idea going on. There's also some customization going on there as well, because some people could come into this as rhythm game players or RPG players, and what are the things that are going on in the game that allow for fans of one genre to sort of reckon with the other?
Yeah, exactly. It's really important to me that if you've never played a rhythm game before, you can still play Nocturne. So there are lots of difficulty settings to make it accessible to all players. On launch as well, we plan to have a mode where you can set any of the columns to play automatically in any combination. So you have, you know, for example, if your mobility isn't so good in one hand, you could just play with one of your hands and have the other columns autoplay. So very accessible, even if you've not got the rhythm aspect down.
I believe you said that all of the fights have their own song to them.
Yeah, you're right. Every enemy in the game has its own song. So there are actually 101 playable songs in the game.
Amazing.
Wow.
So, you know, like an RPG has a lot of enemies. You know, we've had to compose a lot of music, and all the music's composed in-house as well. So the music's kind of composed to the story. So as the game progresses, as the themes of the story change, so you'll find the music will change, and the genres will change as well.
Definitely what we played had a little more heavy metal to it, which was also unexpected given sort of the feel that we were having in exploration, but not unwanted. That was very cool.
Yeah, we kind of drop in with that sort of symphonic rock, but then, you know, later in the game we even go a little bit into funk and lo-fi and those kind of vibes, and piano, kind of orchestral pieces as well.
I'm curious because a lot of games that are just rhythm games will have some kind of story mode, and then an arcade mode where you can just play the tracks. Is there any kind of plan of like a boss rush or something where you can just play the rhythm parts over and over again?
Yeah, there actually is an arcade mode. So every time you beat the enemy, you unlock it for the arcade mode. You can play all your favorite songs. You can try and beat your previous high scores.
I noticed that, well, one wonderful welcome accessibility option is you can change the difficulty of the rhythm aspect in the combat on the fly. If you're not in the fight, you can make it easier, you can make it harder. Matt and I were only playing the first maybe 3 of, I believe, 7 difficulty levels?
6. There are 6.
Yes, all the way up to Zen. How is everyone on the team doing with beating Zen levels?
Yeah, well, our QA has over 1,000 hours of testing in the game, so she's already playing up there with the Zen difficulty for sure, yeah.
Fantastic. And it's always 4 tracks no matter what difficulty it is. It's just
4 columns, that's
4
correct.
columns.
Well, actually, no spoilers, but we do switch things up later in the game.
Oh, nice.
We introduce new mechanics. You know, columns might move around the screen a little bit. We
I
introduce
did
mines.
notice that as well. That was
so,
very nice.
Yeah, we got some surprises coming.
You mentioned off mic that you had a special announcement here at PAX as well about the game, if you want to share with our listeners.
Yeah, exclusively here, we're actually announcing our release dates to March 2026.
Amazing.
All right, fantastic.
There is a demo available on Steam
It's
as
available
well.
right now. You can play the entire first chapter of the game on Steam. This is the first time we've had a crowd of people come and check out the game. Usually it's just friends and family, so it's exciting to be here at PAX.
Hey folks, we're still here at PAX East 2025 and we're chatting with Musla, the
creative director of Bahamut and the Waqwaq tree.
From Starvania Games, being published by SoftSource.
All of us got to play it just now, even our associate producer, and this, I think, kind of game speaks to a simplicity in game design, makes something kind of zen, and that's the first thing I got from playing this game, this kind of floating through space. It's mostly underwater. The control must have been really important.
Yeah.
Did it take a lot of time to kind of fine-tune moving through that space since it's more floaty than just like walking or flying?
I mean, it took until the last minute before release, but it was the most important thing that we focused on the like first 4 months of development. Just focused on it was just boxes, right? It did not look like anything more than feel, and we just kept playing and editing and like fine-tuning the values until we got that feel, and we enjoyed it ourselves. And then we push it to others. So we make sure if they are having fun with the box, they will have fun with a fish-like creature swimming around.
Yeah, you were showing me a little bit of the footage from your development where even at like 3 days of development, you had that kind of smooth movement in mind. It was all simple geometric shapes because it didn't need to be anything but a fun experience, which you could then build out a story and build out the look.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the name and the story. So this is very closely tied to you and your culture and stories like within the mythos of your culture and like gods. And to kind of talk a little bit about how you came to that. Is this something you've always wanted to tell? Where did the narrative come from?
So when we started with the underwater game, one of the team members kind of was into mythology herself. And she was like working with a story, but we were too focused on the gameplay while she already was imagining some of the story behind the game. And she said, so if you're interested, there's a mythical creature in the Arabian folklore called Bahamut. At the time, I did not even know about it, even in like, I'm part of that because our studio is based in Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, sure, we can have the name and then we can figure it out later.
Yeah, you're saying it was a kind of a code name or a placeholder name at the very beginning.
Yeah, it was just Bahamut. And we did not know what it was. We still were figuring it out. She was already knowing all of that. But like for me, I did not know. I did not care at that point. And then with time, we got introduced to it. And we got very fascinated of, this exists. We don't know about it. All right, let's put it in the game and see how the global market feels about it. Because the name Bahamut was actually, it's interpreted as different things in other games like Final Fantasy. It's like a dragon, or D&D, it's like a dragon. But in Arabian folklore, it's a huge whale-like creature, right?
Right, yeah.
So we got a lot of mythical creatures from the Arabian folklore, like I mentioned in 1001 Night book.
Yeah.
Also, Al-Qazwini author. He talks about a lot of myths in the Arabic region. We have them all meshed up together and created our own different story where they all meet together.
Well, that's mythology after all. You know, the idea of like, well, what is the true mythology? That's a contradiction, but it is something where, I mean, I imagine for a lot of folks, a lot of gamers, this is the first time you're seeing, oh, it's a whale?
Yeah.
And even that mishmash, it gets you started into looking into more. So it's a glimpse into a larger world.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the beauty of it, right? Everyone has their own imagination of it and then interpretation of it. And it's from a whale, it can go to something else. And I think that's the beauty of it.
I want to talk a little bit about the design. A lot of indie games tend to have these kind of smooth, simple shape kind of design. And since the mechanics were developed with simple shapes, it seems like there was a streamline to designing this underwater creature you're playing as. It's kind of long, it's cylindrical, but not overly complicated, easy to read and understand.
Yeah.
Was that always the goal too, is to just kind of create this space where it was easy to read what the character looked like, but still have this kind of approachable but kind of soft design that's like draws the player in?
Yeah, so what helped us in our design was that Arabs are known for their calligraphy and writing styles and whatnot. So the game is Arabian mythologies, and inhibiting the drawing really helped out, as well as the movement mechanic. You move in a free space.
Right.
So it gives you room to draw around and wander and draw any shapes you want. It all worked out very well together.
I did want to briefly touch on, you mentioned that idea that, oh, if you die, it's just a quick setback, you're back to the last checkpoint.
We started with, the scope was very big. It was a action adventure with a lot of enemies, and then we said, let's do a Metroidvania game, because when you start with a simple mechanic, it can turn into anything, right?
You can do 1,000 things with it, of course.
And we were so crazy because we were just starting out. We were not that experienced before. Because everyone was enjoying the movement.
Yeah.
So let's not go crazy and not publish this, right?
It feels accessible in a way that sometimes, especially underwater exploration, is not accessible.
Yeah.
Often in games, it's considered the worst parts of a lot of 3D games because of how difficult swimming mechanics are to program, but that doesn't feel that way here.
Because underwater, people tend to give it a lot of mechanics, and then you would have to memorize it. And if you cut down from the game and you go to something else and you come back, you kind of forget all the previous learnings.
Yes.
But in the game, it's simple because there isn't a lot of complicated mechanics and systems. So that keeps it always simple to pick up from.
It was easy to pick up. There was plenty of puzzle to do, plenty of exploration to have. And this demo is, I'd imagine, fairly early in the game, so there's plenty more to unlock and to find.
Yeah.
Well, the game was released today, so there's
Yeah.
some fantastic what is sort of the ideal playtime for the game?
So it takes like 4 to 5, 6 hours of gameplay, depending on people. And
Of course.
But so far, we got the records are saying 5 hours. I think that's the average.
And Bahamut and the Waqwaq tree is out now. It's on Steam for sure. Are there other platforms it's going to be available on or is available on?
So it's going to be available on the other consoles like PlayStation 5, 4, Xbox, and also Nintendo Switch. But in like 3 or 4 months from now, we're still working on that with our publisher. They're working on the porting, but it's now available on Steam today with multiple languages as well. So vocally, it supports Arabic and English.
Amazing.
But in subtitles, it has a lot of other languages like German, French, I believe Chinese and Japanese as well.
We're chatting with Holly from Dark Machine Games,
Hello.
the lead dev on White Knuckle, a horror wall-climbing roguelike. And so I guess my first question is, where the hell does this idea come from? Because it feels so different from anything in the horror space.
So there's 3 of us at Dark Machine, and one of my friends who is a rock climber said we should do a game about rock climbing. And then me and my other friend Jack, who does audio for the game, we're like, well, yeah, but we like horror, so it should be a horror rock climbing game. Maybe you're like being chased by something and you have to keep going as quickly as possible. And that's kind of where the game idea originated. And I had this image in my head from like the first day of prototyping where I was like, it'd be kind of neat if you were like controlling each hand separately to climb. We did some prototyping. We're all like, yeah, this movement, like it was rough back then, but we're like, there's potential here. We just kind of went off from there.
It sounds as though it was an organic kind of like, okay, rock climbing, something's chasing you, something's horrifying, and the horror just reveals itself. You can't look down.
Yeah.
I got to be the one with hands-on while doing the playtest. I was just playing the tutorial. There's nothing chasing me. I hear no sound because I have the headphones off so we can chat. The fear of just falling is real.
Mm-hmm.
At any point, did you consider falling damage, or was it just the terror is enough?
I think the terror is enough because like the real threat, especially in White Knuckle where you're being chased, is that falling gets you closer to whatever is chasing you. The danger, the terror that you feel is that you are running out of time,
Yeah.
right? What we had seen in other climbing games is that there's a real sense of tension, and we're like, how can we amp that up? How can we make that tension even more hardcore? And that's like, well, you're also being chased, makes it more hardcore.
My next question is about the design. It's very pixel art. It's
Yeah.
very simplistic. Did that make it easier to design for? Was there ever a time where you wanted to do third person or wanted more detail?
Yeah. So originally, when we were conceiving the idea, I wanted to do something closer to. Do you all know the Return of the Obra Dinn?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That's
totally.
this beautiful, sort of like old Macintosh, dithered, like one bed aesthetic. But when we were prototyping that early phase, we realized when you're moving quickly, that one bed style in 3D, not that great.
Yeah.
It looks amazing in Return of Obra Dinn, but like
Right.
when you need to quickly read a scene, we're like, okay, we got to go a little bit higher fidelity than that.
Of course.
So much of White Knuckle is inspired by Half-Life 1.
Yeah.
So like we're like, well, maybe we can kind of do something there, keep a little bit of the dither from Return of the Obra Dinn.
Well, because you're so close, so if you have that heavy texture,
Yeah.
you get the pixelated idea, and it speaks of an age.
Exactly, yeah. So it kind of merged from a bunch of different things and came together through all of that. It definitely also makes it achievable for a small indie team, is the other nice thing.
So there's also a roguelike element to this. There are runs. We watched Geoff get gloriously smushed at the end of their run.
It was so good. I loved it.
Yeah.
We love to see it.
Wonderful death.
What I'm curious about is, was the roguelike part always also from the beginning, or did that come as you designed it, wanting to add like an extra thrill and fear?
So super early on, the sort of scope of the game was a lot smaller. It was maybe closer if you could take the kind of structure of climbing and then do to it what like Devil Daggers did, where it was mainly like this sort of like how long can you go in this sort of like
Almost
endless
arcade
thing.
style.
Arcade style. And then that kind of evolved into being a roguelike just as the scope expanded. And we always had plans for some larger meta progression. There's like perks you can get, though it is all still like skill based. Like you start a run always from the beginning with like no upgrades, right?
I'm curious if you have any accessibility options in mind. Obviously, this is a skill-based game, but not everyone's going to have the coordination, but may want to try and get further and see further.
Absolutely. So we have some stuff currently in. There's some things that make the handholds easier to see. I worked with someone in the server who was having issues. They are like, I think red-green colorblind, like super red-green colorblind, and so I made it so there's an option for like extra shimmer there. There's other stuff we have planned. Maybe in the future, some like broader difficulty options.
Right.
Exactly what that's going to look like, we're not sure. But I want the game to be accessible. There's a sort of fine line you have to weave, you know? I want to make sure that the game is allowing for various skill sets and ability levels and everything, while also pushing people to get better and better just naturally. There is also room where like that may not be what everyone is looking for with this kind of game. That's why we have a really big demo.
Yeah.
It's like people say it is the biggest demo they've ever played, which is like maybe bad when you're selling a game, but I think it's good because it means like if the game really isn't for someone, they can give it a fair shake and then be like, you know what, it's not for me.
Well, what it kind of reminds me of, and honestly maybe it's the aesthetic of it too, it makes you think it's a shareware style.
That's exactly what we think.
It's episode 1 of Doom.
Exactly,
How far into development did you start working with Dread XP getting this published?
It's a very funny story. So early on, it was like, oh, maybe we could enter this into Dread XP's Indie Horror Showcase. We made a trailer. We submitted that to Dread's Indie Horror Showcase. We got into that. The demo came out. It did really well. And it's someone locally. We're all based in New Mexico. Someone in like the local game dev community, which is like not very big, was like, hey, I know there's a publisher locally, and introduced us to Dread's head of publishing, Hunter.
Hunter. We love Hunter here.
We love Hunter.
And he's excited to find more New Mexico developers.
Yeah, he was super excited. Dread's really cool. The head of publishing is local, so we can talk to him. They're also really nice. The people we've met have been either really cool or really queer, which is important to us.
Yeah, same.
So it just kind of worked out. Yeah.
I love that. So I know the game's in early access.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a specific target for release?
We do. I don't necessarily want to say it.
No,
because,
that's totally fine.
We're planning on having it out soon. We're releasing an update, and we need to make sure that like we're all on board with what that timeline looks like before we release it to the public.
Have you had any really fun discoveries kind of now that it's in early access, it's out in the wild?
Oh my God, yeah. It's always astonishing when like I make a level and then someone utterly finds the wackiest like way to skip half the level using mechanics in the game.
You give some people an IKEA bookcase and they will build you a Tiffany lamp somehow.
Exactly.
These are those people that are doing the Portal speed runs that I just cannot understand.
God, yeah.
Honestly, playing through this, as far as a like dumb tagline I can give people, it feels like you are in a dystopian aperture science lab without the gun.
And honestly, that is something I have thought about specifically.
Yeah.
Is I want it to feel like you are just stuck there, GLaDOS is there, and you are just SOL because you don't even have a portal gun. You have to climb your way through this facility.
This is the toxic Yuri I need.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, of course.
We're really excited for the games.
Yeah. White Knuckle is out now in early access on Steam. Check it out if that's the kind of horror you're into. If you're into traversal, there's definitely speedrunning strategies to be found. I know I'm going to be playing this once I get back.
Awesome, yeah. And also try out the demo. You can see if you like it.
We are at the booth for Brendan Hessler Games and checking out Desktop Survivors 98. And we have the eponymous developer here. Brendan, thank you for hopping on to talk a little bit about your title.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What can you tell us about Desktop Survivors 98?
Yeah, so it's a roguelite / dungeon crawler that takes place over your actual desktop. So you could be in a Zoom call, watching YouTube videos, doing whatever, and all of the monsters actually just come onto the screen itself. So it runs through a transparent window, and you actually play as your own mouse cursor. It's sort of a bullet hell / heaven in that way because you're using your mouse cursor to dodge around the enemies and survive each of the rooms in the dungeon. And of course the game has a Windows 98 aesthetic to it, so there's some familiar weapons like Solitaire, Minesweeper, the old flower box screensaver, and a bunch more.
That's amazing. So as someone who used to be in 9 hours of video calls a day, where were you a couple years ago for me?
The need presents itself, I think. And as somebody who, the best way for me to pay attention during a call is I will honestly have Solitaire open in another window, not because I'm bored, but because I have that ADHD. Like, the best way to pay attention to someone is to not look at them, is to walk around and fidget with things. This is kind of perfect. And before we started recording, I did mention, this reminded me of, there were a lot of sort of desktop adventure games that happened in the late 90s during the Windows 95, 98 era. You mentioned that you play as your cursor and there are custom characters to that. And I remember all of the virus-laden custom cursors that would happen. How much inspiration did you draw from those memories or those relics?
For the cursors themselves, actually my fiance, she's the one who brought up the idea of it. I don't know if you remember the old like Tumblr pages where you could have custom cursors, and that
I'm
was
still on Tumblr,
huge thing, yeah. And so I had the thought, and of course, like old computers always had the different cursors. People love customizing their desktop in the most unique ways, and
of course.
I really wanted to go all in on that.
Talk to me about how punishing the gameplay is.
Because it uses your mouse cursor, the enemies do move pretty quickly, because it is technically a bullet hell, so you're dodging projectiles. And so for some people, it might be a bit difficult, but it's also so fast-paced that once you lose, you can try again. It's very much a I want to try one more time type of game.
All good roguelikes are.
Oh yeah, of course. I also think because the game is built to be turned on and turned off at any point, I've joked about it, but it could be as a productivity tool or procrastination tool, either or.
Why not both?
They often
Why not
resemble
both?
each other, yeah.
You know, do some work, take a break for 1 minute, survive a room, close the game, that kind of thing.
That is a nice button on a bit of work and good for changing gears. Yeah, no, this is honestly sounding more and more like a productivity tool for me. This is dangerous.
My goal with it was to make sort of a desktop toy that has a little bit more depth to it than just a simple little toy, I guess.
And given that a lot of Steam games that we end up trying out, that we end up playing, very much default to full screen, and even when you window them, there's a little bit of that like, no, you are sitting down and you are playing the game. To have something that is designed around, no, this is a piece of the experience. This is auxiliary to your full computing experience right
100%.
now. It's got a spot.
Yeah, and I really want it to feel like it's part of the desktop, which is why, because a lot of games, you can just minimize the game and that kind of thing. But the mascot character of the game, Sorty, he just sits in the bottom right corner of the screen, even when the game's not really running. So you can click him at any point, and the game reopens and closes itself back down.
I did want to ask what the mascot was named, because it does look like Clippy as a sword. Sorty was exactly where my brain went. Maybe Stabby.
Oh, I went through all the variations. There was Sorty, Stabby, Slashy, and Pokey, and a few more. But I thought Clippy was the most literal way to say paperclip, so Sorty made sense.
So you were telling us this is your first solo dev game.
This is my first solo dev game. I've started many projects before, but this was the first that I decided to just keep going with and hope it works out, and I'm glad I did, and I'm very happy with it, yeah.
Fantastic.
You said you have a demo out now.
We do have a demo on Steam. It's a slightly outdated demo compared to the full version right now, but it's still very akin to how the game feels. And the game itself launches May 20th on Steam.
Congratulations, that's so exciting.
Thank you so much.
I do enjoy how well this booth is leaning into the design aesthetics of the game. I know we're an audio-only medium, but I do want to tell everybody there are physical CD copies of the game here right now.
In jewel cases, of course.
In jewel cases, absolutely. Like, for folks that have nostalgia, real or manufactured, for this time period. I definitely heard at least one person working this booth was born in 1999, and that doesn't mean you can't have nostalgia for the bygone era of computing. In fact, you're probably more primed for it than the rest of us. We've got flashbacks.
We had to live it.
We had to be there for those things. You can just enjoy it.
And you should, I think. So I'm going to check this out a little bit, and I think I'm going to lose a lot of time today, tomorrow, and definitely after May 20th. So yeah, it's a great thing to check out. And Brendan, thank you for taking some time to chat with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're here with Jack from Studio Hybrid, the solo dev behind GIGASWORD, a game that has already won my heart and is probably my game of the show at this point, at least.
Yeah, Xavier for Akipura, the publisher for the game, was describing it to us. So it's a bit of a Shovel Knight. It's a Metroidvania. There's a little bit of puzzle solving to it. Okay, you can stop talking now. We want to play the game.
So Jack, thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for playing. Yeah, it's you said Shovel Knight, Hollow Knight, I think Zelda.
Yeah.
And that's just like the biggest praise that I could possibly receive because those games are so influential to me.
Well, a funny thing that I was noticing while watching Matt play was the other game that I was thinking of was Lost Vikings. That idea of a platformer where you're switching between 3 different Vikings. One is fast, one is strong, and one is sort of does the platforming. And it looks like GIGASWORD is an idea of the sword is damaging, but it's too heavy to do a lot of speed, a lot of good platforming. I love the efficiency of design, and I love that kind of mode switching in what is honestly a classic and wonderful genre. So it's very cool. Like, what was the idea behind that?
Well, it's funny that you say that. I didn't really make this connection initially during the design process, but a lot of people have compared GIGASWORD to, like, it feels like one big escort mission.
Yes.
And they also say, and this is really funny, they also say that the sword feels like its own character. You know,
Yes.
like it's this thing that you're kind of taking care of, you're managing it, you're helping to bring it places, whatever.
My heavy, deadly wife, the
Right,
GIGASWORD.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's like how it feels. One of my favorite games from my childhood and one of my biggest inspirations for this is Blaster Master on the NES.
Yeah.
So the similarity there is like you've got this weapon, which for them it's the tank, right? Like, and sometimes you just have to leave it behind, and that's how this is. It's like, hey, there are going to be moments in GIGASWORD where you have to put your sword down for just a moment and climb up a ladder or something. But there are going to be some moments where you leave it in a room and then you don't see it for a while, and you've just got to go on and try to fend for yourself. And that like vulnerability is what I really wanted to create for this game.
I want to talk about the style. It has that classic kind of pixel art indie style, very influenced, I think, by like the Nintendo era. It's funny because you look at a lot of pixel art indie games now and they look like Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, like robust pixels, but this is very simplified. It reminds me of like Castlevania and DuckTales, those kinds of things.
Even looking at it right now as watching someone play it, seeing the amount of scrolling layers, it feels latter day. This feels very Mega Man 6 in terms of it, yet the color palette looks more NES, whether it's beyond what the NES can do or not. Much like when you talk about Shovel Knight, it looks how you remember these games.
Yes, and that's been my goal. Is like I kept up with the Shovel Knight development pretty closely, and I remember them talking about how they wanted to keep what was good about the NES era and just get rid of like all the jankiness. So for me with GIGASWORD, it's like there is a limited color palette. I think it's about 32 colors, so it's like more than the NES but still limited. And then you've got Parallax, which is like different than how it would work on the NES, but it's still kind of taking you back to that time period. I would say GIGASWORD looks like it's from some sort of made-up console that would have existed between the NES and Super Nintendo.
I also loved in the demo, there's this moment where there's music in the beginning of the game when you first start, and then you get to this area where there's not really any enemies, there's no music, you're just kind of moving through to figure out where to go, and then when you get to the next part where you can really see the map and like really opens up the exploration, the music kicks in. Because that also is something very cinematic to do.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you asked that, because what this is touching upon now is the story of the game, and the demo doesn't really get into the story at all, but the final game will have a pretty deep narrative. There's going to be cutscenes and dialogue between the characters. It's going to be a pretty emotional story, which might be like kind of deceiving when people see the game. They're like, oh, here's this fun Metroidvania action game or whatever, but I've tried really hard to create a really deep bond between the players and the characters in the game and make these characters feel real. That moment in the full game you'll see is actually a really important moment in the story once all those dialogue elements come together.
I got to play this with a controller, and the rumble feature featured very heavily with the combat, and like every time you jam the sword into the ground, the control vibrates. Every time you do a big swing and it lands, the control vibrates. And like I love vibration in games. I don't always play with it on, but it feels so core to the experience here because it really gives you that sense of weight for the sword swing. Was there a lot of design involved in kind of like tweaking that to make it feel like you were swinging the sword?
The very first thing I did when I started this game was I want to just get the game juice down. Before I do any graphics, before I do any story writing or whatever, like make Ezra, the main character, like make him feel good to play as. And that was what I focused on for like the first 6 months. And especially with such a big sword, it's like we need people to feel like they're really wielding something that's not only fun to wield, but that feels like what it is, which is like this big, deliberate, monumental sword.
It sounds like you've got a lot of keen interactions going on in a bunch of different environments and a lot of sort of bloom in the gameplay. As a solo dev, how long have you been working on this title?
I started this in 2019. I had a Kickstarter in 2022, which was successful. I was searching for a publisher in the years after that, finally found Akipara, who have brought me on. They've been incredible to work with. My favorite thing about them is just how friendly and laid back they are. Like, they really understand their developers. They have let me see GIGASWORD's vision through. They're not trying to change it or anything. Like, they get what this game is, and they fully support me and it, and they've been a blast to work with. So it's been a long road to get to this point here, but I'm so thankful for the way that it went because I feel like I'm where I belong. I feel like I'm where I need to be.
Well, the demo's looking fantastic, and I think Akapara has been a great support then, because we're very excited to see this. When can we expect the title? When is it going to release?
I'm hoping for the end of the year. That's the tentative date, yeah.
Fantastic.
Although the demo that I've brought here today is currently on Steam, so anybody that's interested is able to play the demo right now at home. You can go wishlist the game. It'll be coming to all platforms, so they can play it right now.
So all of our fellow retro game enjoyers, Shovel Knight junkies, Metroidvania sickos can check that out, play the demo, and have just as much fun moving around this big sword as we had today. We are at the Critical Reflex booth, and we're talking with Liam, developer of Tanuki Pond's Summer. I believe you were our first repeat PAX interview because you also were responsible for Curse to Golf back in 2022.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you on again. Well,
Very
since even though I'm obsessed with your game, why don't you tell our listeners what it's about?
Sure. Tanuki Pond Summer is a game about a tanuki called Pond who's very lazy, and he lives at this shrine in the middle of this island. At this shrine, every 50 years, is a matsuri, like a Japanese festival. And because it happens once every 50 years, it's a pretty big deal. And it's kind of the connection between tanuki, these Japanese raccoons, and like the humans in the town. It's up to the shrine guardian, happens to be this lazy little tanuki called Pond, to get it ready. But the shrine in the last 50 years has kind of fallen into disrepair. So Pond is then tasked with getting it ready for the end of the summer. So he has to take a part-time job as a delivery tanuki. But that ties in very well because he is like rad at BMX. So he can like BMX across the town really fast, then deliver the packages. But in this game, you don't just deliver the packages. The townsfolk, they're a bit strange, so they don't quite just accept the package. They end up roping Pond into doing many different types of activities, kind of a la Mario Party style minigames. So then once Pond earns money from those activities or helping the deliveries, he then can go back to the shrine and then fix up the shrine. So there's like quite a few different things going on, but generally the whole point is having this summer experience of doing many different things and then having a great matsuri at the end of the summer.
When you first told me about this game, you told me Tony Hawk, BMX controls, package delivery, mini games, and no falling damage, and you had me immediately.
And it's very cool that the BMX is sort of from the very outset, like even before delivering packages, here's how to be rad on the bike.
That's exactly right. I've learned from making other games that tutorials are the hardest thing to make. Like, making the game is hard, but it's not the hardest part. Like, hooking a player from the beginning. We really wanted players to get on the bike, doing tricks, doing some fun stuff, and then when we try to talk to you about the matsuri or the tanuki lore, all that kind of stuff, you're willing to wait. You're willing to, like, oh, I'm going to get back on that bike soon and that kind of stuff.
I can be cool on my bike while I do that, right?
Yeah,
cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes the traversal so much more fun. If I can grind on a rail with my bike, I'll go as far as I need to go.
I feel like that's kind of a missed opportunity for so many games. Like, if I say, hey, it's a delivery game, you probably have some sort of stigma about delivery games you may have played already.
Escort missions or whatever it is. Yeah.
You know, not to begrudge those games, but if you're going to ask somebody to go from point A to point B, at least make it be as rad as hell, right? As super cool or something. I've been so surprised at the response so far and just kind of how people like have been staying right to the end of the demo, which is like unheard of like most of the time.
Well, I mean, Sarah was saying like, I'll pop over, I'll spend like 5 minutes on it, and it's a 20-minute time demo, and you played.
I got timed out.
You got timed out.
I was doing sumo wrestling. I was in a mini game, stomping my feet and punching and belly bumping. It was great.
Yeah, for the benefit of our listeners, for the demo here, the mini game at the end of it, the delivery you make is to a sumo wrestler, and so it is a Punch-Out inspired in the best ways kind of sumo match. And yeah, a little bit of timing for charging up your stamina. It takes you there immediately.
Yeah, and it also shows off the humor of the game, too, right?
Yeah, the characters from the get-go, when you're picking up the packages, the guy who's behind the desk there's a clear, like you look at it, there's personality and relationships already.
I think because I'm writing the game as well, I don't think I can do very serious, right? I'm quite a positive person in general, so it would be very weird for me to write dark. A big part of Tanuki for me, I mean, it's kind of my love letter to my home in Kyoto.
Yeah.
But also, it's meant to also be sort of an allegory for being someone who lives in Japan but is different, which, you know, I think a lot of people around the world can speak to being in a world where you feel different and stuff like that.
We're all strangers in our own way.
I find living in Japan to be a funny experience as a foreigner quite a lot, where you're just like, it's because I'm not Japanese, and I have to accept it or I'm not going to be able to survive here, right? And there's something about that is, I think really interesting.
Speaking of preemptive survival there, I believe Tanuki's, amongst many things that they're known for, they also are noted for their enormous testicles.
Big balls.
Big balls.
They definitely are, and it has been something that Japanese people have noted to us multiple times. I mean, half of our team are Japanese, so, it's not like it's something we haven't thought of. It's just that we want to ship worldwide, right? And we can't ship if the character has giant testicles. And all I will say is, can you imagine riding a BMX with those size of testicles? No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
It'd be
not.
a very painful experience. So, yeah, I feel like...
Hey, if you can't have big balls, at least you can ring your bike bell as much as you want.
You can ring the bike bell, actually. I forget that's even in the game. There's no purpose, but you can ring a bell.
It has every purpose. It's like Untitled Goose Game. You just need to
You just
honk.
need a honk button. Maybe we can have him go, ah, or something like that.
Yes, that would be so.
yeah,
but
that would
maybe
be
you have to like ring the bell enough
like,
times, and then you can
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
A lot of stuff like that I think is really important in games because I think, especially in Tanuki, we kind of have a motto of like, if we tell you, we're going to show you. Like if we're putting like objects in the world and you're on a bike, you should be able to smash through them or you should be able to knock them out of the way because that just makes sense in your head. So we have a lot of things that we try to add as much as our scope can handle.
Yeah.
We have benches in the game, and if you have benches, you should be able to sit on them. So basically, you can just sit on benches, and he sits there, and he waddles his little feet. And
I noticed that.
Right? So stuff like that is really important because it's the little bits between the game telling you what to do versus you being able to make a decision for yourself about what you want to do with your time.
So speaking of scope, talk to us. What's the status of Tanuki right now? When are we going to get a full game, an early access?
I can't say that, but let's just say sooner than you think for the demo. But the game, we don't have an announcement yet for the release date. We have announced that it's coming to Game Pass, so you'll be able to play it day one on Game Pass when we ship. So if you have Game Pass, you can play it for free without giving me any money. I hope you feel bad. But no.
Enjoy the game and talk about it then.
Yes, but it's coming to PC and Switch and Xbox Game Pass. Probably Switch too when we can get our dev hands on that. From a scope perspective, we're looking at like 8 to 10 hours of like a really fun experience. One of the things that is like a key for me when I started this game was it's designed over a month because I want you to know that it ends. Like I want you as the player to know that every day that passes, you're getting closer to the end. And when you have Game Pass, like, you can play anything. So I really wanted to create a game that was not only a really fun adventure, it was a game that you can finish, but it's also a game that, and my publisher hates me saying this, but it's a game that once you finish it, you never have to play it again. Like, that's it.
You can choose to.
You could choose to, but I'm really happy that if you just have a great memory of it, that's fine with me, right?
Well, you said 8 to 10 hours. I'm like, cool. But how many more hours can I spend just doing flip kicks and
it's
tricks?
Designed to be that you could just boot it up and you could just do the BMXing and you could just spend time in the town and BMX, and that's...
I will spend so much time
I look forward
on
to
that
Pon's
bike and
rendition of
falling off
Superman.
that bike. Yes.
Well, listeners, keep a lookout for Tanuki Pond Summer from Critical Reflex. It is a very fun time. I cannot wait to see what other ridiculous things we get up to and NPCs we get to see and people we get to deliver to.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This has been great.
We are in the PAX Rising area at 3B's booth. We have just played a little bit of Perfect Tide Station to Station, and we're here with Meredith Grand, the director behind the game. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to chat with us.
Yeah, thanks for playing the game.
Station to Station is a sequel to Perfect Tides, another point-and-click adventure game that taps into a very specific kind of feeling of nostalgia of a place and time, whether that is the 2003 that the game is or the being 18 and just starting off and living in a big city that is seemingly eternal. What else can you tell us about the game?
Well, I mean, that's a good start. This is about a character who wants to be a writer. So a lot of what she's doing in this game is experiencing this new environment of the big city, having conversations with people, and she's collecting, in addition to like the traditional inventory of like crap you find on the street, she's also collecting knowledge. She can use that knowledge to have conversations with people. She can upgrade that knowledge to make better choices in her writing and to have different kinds of conversations about it. All of that is reflected in the story, which is really like the driving force behind this game, is that from 18 to 19, Mara's life changes enormously in ways that I think are pretty recognizable.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can look at things, you can talk to people, and it's very context piece and from inventory and what have you. I imagine that was all very deliberate. And were there things that you wanted to be able to do that was like, no, simplicity, let's get the story right here?
Absolutely. I mean, I think with my first game, I was really trying to draw from my influences of like Sierra games from the 90s.
Yes.
And releasing the game was kind of the first time that I became hyper aware that there are things that have changed about video games that the players demand. Because of that, and also because I was a little bit more skilled as a game developer, I knew that I wanted to do something that was a little bit more my own thing, a little bit more what I want, and that confidence allowed me to think about how I could simplify this system and make it a little bit easier for people to jump in if they're not familiar with this genre.
And with a more simple system, you can add a lot of humor in all of the clicks, right? If it's not so arduous to click and find something, everything can have a joke, a piece of nostalgia to it, and that was really fun to see.
Yeah, I don't think, I imagine I could have gotten further in the demo, but I was having way too much fun getting Mara's opinion on everything. I've been noticing a lot of folks are kind of like, this is a sequel to a game that you made that has very recognizable art, or at least that's me being biased. Have you been getting a lot of reactions where this is everyone's first experience with you and your work and your style?
There is a bit of that, and there are people who are coming over because they see that the logo of the game is hand-drawn comic art, and that was kind of a choice I made where I'm like, I want people to see something, if they've never seen my art before, I want them to see something that is reminiscent of like a video game manual where it was like, here's a bit of the true art, and then the rest of the game is this pixel art, and in between is how you imagine everything actually looks. So I just love the idea that one piece of art can really feed people's imagination and allow them to see the game resembling themselves in the way that it does. And then, to my great surprise and delight, a lot of people are recognizing this artwork, realizing they read a comic that looks like this, and coming over and seeing that I'm still doing stuff that might be interesting to them.
What has the creative process been like for you moving into the video games medium from comics?
Well, I feel pretty confident in my ability to tell a story. I spent so much time going back and forth with my audience on sort of a daily basis. So I really learned the kind of things that my audience reacts to. And I feel pretty confident in my ability to tell a story. Everything else about video games has been a learning experience, and I've had to like figure out how those things work in the process. But I do think that comics have helped ground me, because ultimately, when I design the mechanics of a game, I am doing it around the story that I feel needs to be told. Whatever mechanics can grow out of that, I'm going to explore that. But the story comes first for me.
Are there interesting areas of conveyance and storytelling that you found either freedom or this is more restricting than I thought, moving from one to the other?
Yeah, I mean, comics kind of taught me that ultimately the reader is going to be in control of the pacing of the whole thing. So I already had acquiesced some of that control to somebody else. And I feel like video games are a bit of an extension of that, where yes, they do control the timing still. They also control whether they even want to do the thing that you've asked them to do. So you can sort of gently lead them in a direction, but you're not going to predict absolutely everything that they're going to do. So it's good to make the game with that in mind, that they want to explore, that they want to do things non-linearly sometimes. I wouldn't say, it's been hindering in any way. I think learning those skills has actually really expanded what I can convey to the player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in addition to the story and that clearly being the driving narrative, obviously we only saw a little slice of it, the world building that you do right from the outset. I was transported back to my early college career. Look, we live in New York City. We're creatives. We know what this is like.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it is, because the first game you have a character who's very isolated and almost willfully keeping her world small. And even though she has a desire to explore, there's a little bit more fear there. And in this game, she's encouraged early on to really put herself out there and just see what people say if she says something to them. So it did seem very natural that she would take those topics and just be like, so how do you feel about that, to everyone she meets? And
Anarchy, thoughts?
Yes. Exactly. You find that out and you're like, this is the answer. I need to know more. I need to find my people. So I think it seems very natural to an 18-year-old to want to do that, to want to find commonality between these subjects that you've just thought about for the first time that you now think is the truth.
Now I have to ask, how much is Mara based on your personal experience, or is she just a character that you've created?
It's a very strong representation of what I've personally experienced. I tell people that the story is not true, but everything in it is real. So if I felt a way that is significant, she feels that way too. And I've created the conditions for that to happen, whether they are the literal conditions of my life or not. I promise you'll know what I went through.
And so what is the release date for the game?
It is close to being done. By the end of this year, I am expecting to be done with it.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. And can any of our listeners, is there a demo on Steam? Is there anywhere where people can try it out now, or when can they expect to?
There is. They can try out Station to Station as a demo right now on Steam. And if they are impatient, they can play the first Perfect Tides game on Steam as well.
Well, I know I'm going to be doing that when I get back. I encourage others to do the same. Please wishlist Perfect Tides Station to Station. If you have bad memories of playing through point-and-click games, don't worry, this is a lot more smooth. If you have good memories about it, good, you're going to want to play more of this.
It will help you through those bad memories. That's what we're here for.
We are finally, and I say finally because I've been so excited about this game, seeing Fretless. And we are chatting with the very confused main character of Fretless,
yeah.
Studios, Rob. Rob,
Yes.
thank you for chatting with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
So Geoff and I just got hands-on with Riffless. What made you want to make a turn-based RPG with rhythm game elements?
Well, I mean, we kind of stumbled into it, honestly. Like, the initial reason we made this game was for kind of something totally different. I'm a YouTuber, musician, and I had this video idea where you would battle with guitars. And I was like, it'd be fun if we made a little Flash game that people could go to, and then the audience wouldn't be expecting it, and it'd be just like a silly extra thing. And so I hooked up with my friend Geoff, who was a game developer, and we started thinking about the game, started building it, and every step we took, we were like, there's like 12 more steps. Like, that would be incredible. And it's like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. This is cool. Let's keep going. Let's make this a bigger thing. This is cool. This is cool. Let's bring other people on to get some help. And then it just kept snowballing and snowballing and snowballing until we got here. And thanks to the help with Playdigious to help us create the project, it's now a full-fledged game. We just kind of stumbled upon a musical RPG, a guitar RPG, if you will. And
Guitar RPG is very good.
Yeah, I like that.
It's a musical RPG game, and there's so much fun to be had with that combination that we just had to see it through, and here we are, like 8 years later. But we've been working on it like full time, a little over 2 years. But yeah.
This is the first time I've heard of that level of scope creep, ending up in a game with a release date and everything, and I'm glad it's this one.
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that in the RPG elements of this, you have the upgrading of your weapon. Your weapon is your axe, it is your guitar, and all of that. All of the puns are there, as well as the fact that all of them are things that if you've played guitar for any amount of time, if you're a hobbyist at all, you recognize. I would imagine you were also fueling that of like, no, it's got to be fantasy but accurate, better strings, better pickup, fix up the tuning heads, everything else.
And it just came together so easily, really. It's like, what are things you would do in an RPG? What is the musical aspect of that? And it's like, oh, upgrading your weapons, like just like you said, adding a pickup. And actually the rhythm part came later. The goal was just make everything musical. And as we kept going, we're like, why don't we make the attacks musical too? And that rhythm aspect came in after that, as we were just continuing to add more music things to the game. Also, as we kept finding that with the scope creep, we could do it. So that was a big reason why I came later too, because when it was just us without a publisher and the guys were just doing it on the weekends, that was outside of the scope. But thankfully the scope has gone up. And I think the rhythm aspect is a pretty obvious, fun thing to put in.
When we were talking about it before, like, I really love that the combat is it's turn-based, but also you have kind of like a card battle system in the sense that you can pick each attack and like they come out of your deck in different orders. And so it changes the musicality of even each battle.
And that was the reason for that. Having that card aspect randomizes it more. And so you can have different combinations of attacks, and every attack is a riff, and then they work together in a different way. And they also change slightly depending on what's before and after them, or what area you're in. And yeah, that was a big reason we added the cards, because that you get more music.
I also love in the environments, like the first time I noticed, I walked past like a flower and I heard a noise. I was like, oh, interesting. And then you get to like an outcropping where there's a bunch and you run through them, and it just becomes musical. And that must have been a lot of fun to like, what common things can we turn into musical instruments and make the environment musical too?
Bellflowers.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's right there, or like the speakers in the background. Like, I like that the game itself also has a lot of stuff set up to help you keep the rhythm, so you can keep up with it. It's not just like you have to time it, but you can follow the rhythm based on the environment around you.
I want to shout out Geoff, where everything is musical in the game, and it all works together musically and sounds good. And that, as a composer, is a huge challenge.
Yeah.
It's a very like non-linear way of composing.
Well, the amount that we've played is absolutely fantastic. The
Thank
music's
you.
very cool. Are there other genres of music for different areas, for different kinds of enemies?
Yeah, and you get different instruments, and those come with like different genres too. Like the last one you get is the 8-string, which I'm especially excited about.
Yeah,
the
sure.
8-string guitar, that's my favorite instrument.
I mean, it's just like legendary at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And it's metal as hell.
Gent AF.
Yes, it is.
And even the names of a lot of the places, I can't remember if it was a harbor or wherever else. It's like, oh, go to Drop D. And you spell it so it's not Drop D tuning, but it's Drop D
It's
tuning.
Drop D Beach, yeah.
Drop D Beach, there it is.
Did you ever get tired of making music puns for this game?
No. And that was the funnest, the easiest part. As many puns as we can put in there. And that's the part that, I'm responsible for, which is really, really easy. And then the game developers have to actually do the hard work of making the game work.
So did you do a majority of the writing for like the dialogue and the story?
So a lot of the music in the ambient tracks that are in the world, those are my songs reworked by Geoff.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of my own melodies and tunes, and a lot of the songs are built out of a lot of like musical motifs that I've used, but the music in the game is Geoff.
Amazing. And what about the narrative?
We kind of pulled from, so I've been a YouTube creator since I was a junior in high school. I'm 34 now. Throughout all of that time, we've made so many different videos and different characters and got to do videos with so many different instruments, and we've been pulling from that.
That's amazing.
Wow.
It must be nice, like, of course, for folks like us who may not have been familiar with your previous work but really love what we're playing here, but then also people who've been following your career all this time to then get a game that's basically a video game version of stuff they've experienced for so many years.
Yeah,
it's wild.
Is really surreal for me. It's a real like celebration of all the stuff that me and my team have made, and me and Jake in particular. He shoots and edits all my videos, and he's Rick Riffson. But we also were very intentional from the start that this isn't like a YouTuber game.
Right.
Like, it's not just for people that know about my channel or know about these characters, but hopefully for people that don't know about any of that. They're just a really great roster of characters and instruments and sounds and ideas that we've just kind of have been curated and mother approved from the channel in the last 10 years. Like, we kind of know what's been the most fun to have on the channel, and that goes into the game.
It's coming out on Steam. Are you going to do other platforms as well?
It's a hopeful,
yeah, like a thumbs up, like you would love to do it if you could. Sure.
I'd love to say for sure, but we don't know for sure. It also depends on how well it does. Like if it doesn't make any money, then we probably can't port it. But my hope is that we port it on like everything. Obviously, my hope is that we also do a sequel.
Right, of course, sure.
Well, then it's important that our listeners check out the game.
Maybe if you're watching this in the future, the 7th game just came out.
You're right, exactly. We are chatting with Seth and Audie from the Gex Trilogy remaster. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So, what is it like to take a game like this that is so beloved and also full of pop culture, starring a very well-known comedian? How does the process to restore something like this begin?
So, like any project we do a lot of research and development into just like specifically for each franchise, for each character, for each game we do, how do we best preserve it? And I think that's kind of the key word, is that for Carbon Engine, we always strive to preserve these games as close and accurate as possible. Not just the technology that they were on, but also the context of what they were created. For this game and for other games, creating a full package that makes people understand kind of where the character, where the game comes from, being able to experience that both in the software and supplemental materials is extremely important. So preserving the games, preserving the attitude, preserving Gex as he was definitely kind of like alpha omega to this.
As somebody who played a whole lot of Deep Pocket Gecko back in the day, even just jumping on this, it really did feel like the old times, but minus some of the things that we romanticize about them not having in these old games. I felt the way that it was.
You felt the Gex in you.
I did. I felt the Gex in me.
Yeah.
And I got to jump on a Switch and go into a TV, and that's what's the most important thing.
Exactly, right? And you quipped about it as you did it. And yeah.
Obviously, Dana Gould, beloved comedian, awesome, funny person, beloved to this character too, and loves this character. Talk a little bit about getting him back involved and like what that was like to connect with him again after all this time about a game that maybe you didn't know if he still loved or not.
That was kind of interesting because I worked on a lot of games over the years, and now in the later years worked on a lot of these remasters, collections. And generally, I talk to developers. I talk to people who were designers and programmers and artists. But this is one of the first projects where there was a media personality kind of involved. And I was kind of curious myself when we reached out to him originally, like, would he care? Like, what was Gex to Dana Gould? And I always assumed that this was like a gig, you know? Right. It's like, well, but when we reached out to him, he was probably as passionate about Gex as we were by that point. Gex is me. Like, I put myself into Gex, and now many years later, people see me as Gex because they grew up with me as that character. So it was really heartwarming to see just how important this character was to him. Man, he loved talking Gex.
It's always so refreshing when it's like, yeah, I might actually be the character's biggest fan, and I got to play them, and that's how big of a fan kind of thing.
And we learned that, like, you know, he wrote a lot of that dialogue. It's a lot of Johnny Carson. But I was always curious, like, where does this come from? Like, was that something that, like, Crystal Dynamics came up with? So I asked Dana about it, and he's like, no, that's me. Like, that's the stuff I grew up with. And Gex is me. So that's the answer.
I think what's really great about a trilogy like this also is we get to see within one console generation a character go from 2D to 3D.
Yeah, right.
The most popular mascots made that jump when they went to a new console.
Yeah.
But Gex did it just from game to game.
One generation,
Yeah. And it's really fascinating. For the development side, obviously, there were a lot of versions of the different Gex games. What was it like to try and pull that together? Was it obvious that you were going to go with the PlayStation version for the games, or did you have to kind of figure out what would work best?
So it was kind of obvious in terms of content complete versions, and also in terms of like the media in which Gex made sense was sort of like the CD-ROM era of like more attitude, more talking, more sound, more voice. So we wanted to kind of focus in on the PlayStation versions, as the N64 versions have some exclusive stages, but are kind of less in terms of content. There's less voice clips. The music quality is a little bit lesser. So what we did was we focused on one console, specifically PlayStation, to make sure that there was a consistency across all the games. However, for those who grew up with the N64 versions, we do include footage of the things that were exclusive to the N64 in the museum mode. So we made sure to preserve, in every way we could, all the versions of Gex.
And talk about the museum mode a little bit, because it feels like with what you guys do in digital clips, like this idea that old games don't just have to be remasters, they should be a time capsule of what the game was.
I mean, context is king, especially when you re-release games like this. And it's something that I feel very passionate about, being like a gaming historian. I've written a few books and stuff, right? So like including things like a museum mode where you can kind of look through development documents or interviews, things like this, it helps create that context so that you don't just get like an old piece of software kind of fallen from the sky into a modern system and just say like, well, it was important to someone, I guess. Giving them that context to understand like, this is what made these games special then, and that's what also timelessly makes them special now, is really important.
It's one of those things, like, I recently got my copy of the GBA Shantae game, the missing link in the Shantae series, and it's like, I have a physical copy of a Game Boy Advance game in 2025.
Yeah.
A thing that I never thought would happen. It's my favorite console. Like, it's important to have these physical things because we're running, well, first of all, the way things are going here in the U.S., it's like we may not have physical anything, right?
Yeah,
and digital stores may limit what you can access based on what certain people in certain parts of the government think, and it's that kind of stuff that's scary.
Yeah.
And so to have these kinds of re-releases, digital, physical, of our past so we can have access to that, I think is more important now than ever.
Yeah, and like the Shantae GBA story is so fascinating. It really makes me proud of where I work. And even something like with Gex that like some years ago, I don't know if the industry was in a place where we could bring Gex back and give that proper context, but now we're finally here. And I do think that Josh has a lot to do with the industry being ready for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. I would love for you to let the listeners know when this will be available, what platforms, where they can find it.
So Gex Trilogy, the physical version, is available for pre-order now. The digital version comes out June 16th.
And where can they get the physical version, Seth?
They can get it on Nintendo Switch, PS5, Xbox Series, and Steam.
And what address do they go to pre-order it?
LimitedRunGames.com.
Wow.
Wow.
I can't believe I remembered that.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. I forget it all the time. Yeah, but please do check it out. We're very proud of the work. Quality of life features like native widescreen, analog controls.
Mm-hmm.
It's really transformative. So if you played Gex before, it's a new experience. If you haven't,
it's the best way to play.
It's a very modern feeling game. So
absolutely.
do check it out.
Hey everybody, it's our final day at PAX East. I'm here with Ben and Fabian of Fabraz Studios, and I just finished playing Demon Tides. I had a really great time with it. Can you guys tell our listeners a little bit more about the game?
Yeah, so it's an expressive open-world platformer that it immediately explains our two pillars, which are the expressive part, which is a subgenre we're pushing, where the idea is in how many different ways can you cross the same gap. And so that is kind of incentivized through the level design, but it's also very much incentivized through the moveset. And that means, for example, if you have a double jump and a spin, what happens if you do a spin first and then a double jump? What if we add a boost to that, like what's that as a modifier? And suddenly you've got all of these chainable combinations to express yourself through the movement of the character. And then pillar number 2 is the open world, and that's basically the easiest comparison points are Bowser's Fury or Wind Waker, where you've got this big, vast, colorful open world ocean with all of these amazing, intricate structures in the distance, and you can just zoom there as fast as you want in your little snake form and then start platforming and exploring the world.
That little snake is so fast. It's so good.
Yes.
One we had to keep on ramping up more and more, and it's tough balancing also with platforming that we lean into also the absurdity of how far you can push the speed too.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the things that I really liked is I played the tutorial and then a little bit of the open world. In the tutorial, you taught me how to expressively platform.
Yes.
Right? I am very much a creature of habit. If I know how to do a double jump, I will always do a double jump. And you're like, hey, in this little section, you can't do that. Try spinning instead. Or I've given you a crystal, so you have to use your boost attack.
Yeah.
How did you think about teaching the player to use the world that you've created for them?
So, and Ben will agree, but I think a lot of it has come from our previous game, Demon Turf. We learned a lot about how to tutorialize this, because there's a lot to teach, and we don't want to overburden the player either. So we just kind of very carefully structured the tutorial to incentivize playfulness.
You can go too far on it too, that it's a delicate balance of you want to teach the player what they can do, but also not over-explain it. Both, it's a lot for the player to read, and like, you don't want an overburdened and overbearing tutorial, but also there's magic in that discovery of like, you found something that it feels like a moment of discovery of like, I did something that devs didn't even plan for. And we usually did, but it's a lot more fun when they think that they just discovered on their own.
And we don't teach everything. Like there's a whole another layer of moves that you haven't discovered that, you know, you kind of are supposed to just discover while playing the game over the next couple of hours.
And I appreciate the fact that you don't lock the moves until you get the tutorial for it. I know Banjo-Kazooie had a lot of fun with that kind of a thing, but while Sarah was playing through the demo...
I found Snake immediately.
and yeah, that sort of accident also, I think, opens up the possibilities of, I'm already discovering so much, what more is there to do, what is this for, and I'm going to find out.
Right, exactly.
So what can you tell us about where people can find this game right now? You said there's a Steam demo?
Yeah, so there's a Steam demo right now. We are planning to update it probably next month. So that's going to be a big performance boost. It's the big one. And a bunch of like small player feedback things and improvements. We're hoping to launch this game sometime later this year.
Oh, that's very exciting.
So it's always so nice to see a good 3D platformer, something where the controls feel nice, you can see where you're going, and the movement just feels good. Demon Tides is absolutely an example of that. Was 3D platforming something that either one of you, both of you, were like, we're going to make this good, this is a passion for us? Was this the genre that like you really wanted a gun for? Because, I mean, everything that you built on here from Demon Turf into Demon Tides is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we started with a 2D platform with Slime-san, and that was kind of the beginning where we realized combining moves is kind of really fun. Then we did that into Demon Turf, but unlike Slime-san, where we kind of felt like we explored what we wanted to explore and we're done, with Demon Turf, like Ben and I were both like, you know what? I feel like we can do this even better.
Yeah.
And so that's why we really felt like, okay, let's do Demon Tides, let's kind of amp it up, really explore this subgenre, and that's like the biggest fun of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like a lot of Demon Turf was, we did the first release and that had ups and downs on the things that we felt worked and things we wanted to improve on. And we did DLCs that were sort of experiments and testing the waters, like, well, if we tried removing combat and having this narrow platform focus, what if we lean into like absurd difficulty and make you time a tower and make it very punishing? But then there's still that core, the fundamentals of the platforming that felt like there's more we can push for this and really want to just try a sort of fresh spin on all of it, which this is sort of jumping forward a new level of fidelity.
And 3.5 years later, here we are.
Yeah, a very long-term jump.
How much time between the games?
Yes.
I had a lot of fun with the platforming on it, and also there was a really nice segment that caught me up on the story because I hadn't played the first game.
Yeah.
Are there Easter eggs and things for people who have played the first game who are going to
Yeah.
be like, oh my God, it's that guy?
Yes, definitely. Like that was kind of the main goal, is that like anybody can jump in and play, and they get the context they need and can enjoy it. But obviously, if you know the world beforehand, and some of these characters are returning characters, or you'll get references of characters that might not appear, but at least they, we find out a little bit what they've done over the last 2 years, because this game is 2 years after the previous one.
Given that this is a sequel, that there is that open world aspect of, as you were pointing out while Sarah was playing, anything you see in the background, you can travel to, you can go to. Mm-hmm. At what point did you have to tell yourselves, okay, that's enough stuff, because you could just keep adding forever?
I don't think we told ourselves that enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think we told ourselves that too late. We're definitely trying to limit it now, but like there's still fighting that instinct of like, but what if we just did this?
Because it is coming out, so you did stop somewhere.
That's true.
I think so.
Yeah.
But I already suggested like a script edition for an area and another level.
So we can't help it.
The gate's closed, but like it inches up sometimes.
How big is the team that's working on this?
Core team of 5, but then a bunch of people we work with for contractors, for like animation, music, key art.
You're really fortunate to know a lot of people, even outside of our studio, that we've worked with in the past, and we continue working with in every project. So we kind of consider them like half teammates.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because at this point, like, we've been working them for 5-6 years.
Many years.
And past games. So, like, the musicians and were working with us back on Demon Turf as well, and multiple projects.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any plans for a physical release?
We're
exploring, and every previous game we've released had one, so fingers crossed.
Oh, that's very exciting. Yeah, we're big physical collectors.
Same.
As someone who really enjoys the N64 collectathon puzzle platformers, this really brought me to a nice space where none of those inconveniences of being on the N64, and the art is beautiful, and like the 3D world is really wonderful.
Thank you.
Probably more like a Crash collectible thing in the way that it feels and plays, but it gave me that nostalgia while also letting me explore and not feel railroaded into what I needed to do, and it sounds like that's what you were going for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if any of this sounds really good to any of you listening, just check out Demon Tides. If you missed Demon Turf, you don't have to go back to play it, but you should go back to play it. It's still a great game. But be sure to check it out. As we said, the demo is out on Steam now, and be sure to check it out.
This is Ben from Pracy Studios creating Nocturne, a rhythm RPG.
This is Musleh Az-Zahrani from Starvania Studio based in Saudi Arabia.
This is Holly Jenka from Dark Machine Games. We have made White Knuckle.
I'm Brandon Hesslau of Brandon Hesslau Games. Desktop Survivors 98 is available on May 20th.
I'm Jack Breen from Studio Hybrid. I'm making GIGASWORD.
I'm Liam Edwards. I'm the game director of Tanuki Ponsama from the studio Denkiworks in Japan. We're published by Critical Reflex.
Meredith Gran, 3B's Studio with Perfect Tide Station to Station.
My name's Rob Scallon. I'm a video game character.
I'm Audie Surley. I am the producer on Carbon Engine and the producer on Gex.
Seth Fulkerson from Limited Run Games.
I'm Fabian Rossover, the founder of Fabraz.
I'm Ben Miller, partner in crime and program at Fabraz. And
happy gaming!
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.